Chapter 426. Your daughter is gone too. Jiang Xuan stepped out slowly. His aura was completely restrained, showing no ripples of energy. He looked more than just simple. He seemed ordinary, like a commoner who had never touched the path of cultivation. His expression was shadowed, his eyes cast downward. He was in a foul mood. Anyone would be. To come out of a period of secluded cultivation only to find that your wife had vanished? This was the Earth Emperor's secret realm, with the Earth Emperor himself presiding here. Who could have possibly harmed Nangong Mingyue? Suddenly, a notification from his golden finger flashed across his vision. Nangong Mingyue failed to change her destiny and has departed for the Phoenix Ancestral Land. The marriage bond of her past life has deviated, creating a karmic debt of fate. You must reach the Phoenix Ancestral Land within 100 years to rescue her. Otherwise, the Phoenix will descend, the human race will be extinguished, and you will meet a tragic death at her hands. Jiang Xuan's heart sank to the bottom of an abyss. He walked up to the Earth Emperor, looking him directly in the eye, dropping all honorifics. What exactly happened? The Earth Emperor remained silent for a moment. The master of the Phaeacian Pavilion felt a surge of guilt. After all, the disturbance caused by the Phoenix destiny was directly related to his actions. He stood up quickly, trying to soothe the situation. Don't be hasty, let's talk. Your daughter is gone too, the Earth Emperor interrupted. Jiang Xuan froze. The pavilion master stiffened in place, feeling like the world was collapsing. He wanted to weep. The Earth Emperor really knew how to twist the knife. While Jiang Zhao's departure had nothing to do with the pavilion master, this news was like pouring oil on a raging fire. Remembering how Jiang Xuan's mother had scolded him previously, the pavilion master shuddered. He immediately straightened his face and spoke with forced gravity. Jiang Xuan, there is a massive opportunity right now. The Earth Emperor and I are discussing how to secure it for you. Jiang Xuan completely ignored him. A massive opportunity? What did that have to do with him? He had been enjoying a happy life with his wife and child, but after one session of meditation, his home was empty. How was he supposed to care about some vague treasure? I want to know everything that happened, Jiang Xuan said coldly. If he weren't currently weaker than the two men standing before him, his violent temper would have already seen him lashing out. The pavilion master, sensing the danger, tried to interject again. This is a chance to achieve sainthood. Get lost, Jiang Xuan snapped. The pavilion master panicked and cast a pleading look at the Earth Emperor, shaking his head to signal the pavilion master to stay calm. The Earth Emperor looked at Jiang Xuan and explained the entire sequence of events. Finally, he handed over the jade comb and the life spirit to the young man. I was too cautious, the Emperor sighed. My hesitation led to this. The pavilion master stood nearby, his body tense, hardly daring to breathe. He wasn't afraid of Jiang Xuan himself, but he was terrified of the boy's mother. She was a ruthless figure who could crush a godly venerable with a casual flick of her wrist. She was not someone to provoke. Jiang Xuan lowered his head, lost in thought. Nangong Mingyue had been influenced by the vast memories within the Phoenix destiny. Facing the risk of her soul being overwritten, she had to go to the Phoenix Ancestral Land to seek a greater power to fight back. Meanwhile, Jiang Zhao had gone to the Dragon Ancestral Land to obtain the primal dragon inheritance for his sake. In the end, it all comes down to a lack of strength, Jiang Xuan whispered. The joy from his recent breakthrough vanished, replaced by a deep sense of shame. He was too weak. His cultivation was too slow. If he couldn't even protect his own small family, how could he ever protect the human race? I am going back to the Jiang family, Jiang Xuan said, taking his leave. The Earth Emperor frowned, sensing that Jiang Xuan was in a volatile state. The pavilion master felt a surge of anxiety and urgency. He struggled for a moment before blurting out his thoughts. I bear the responsibility for what happened to Nangong Mingyue. I know you are angry. Why not vent that rage? Those Immortal Sect disciples outside are perfect prey for your blade. Originally, he had intended to use the Immortal Sect as a whetstone for Xuantian's geniuses. But now, if killing them could dissolve Jiang Xuan's resentment, it was a price worth paying. Furthermore, if Jiang Xuan slaughtered them all, it might make it easier to secure that specific spot in the upcoming competition. Additionally, the Earth Emperor and I are trying to secure a Heavenly Dao slot in the Dao Saint Realm, the Pavilion Master continued. If we succeed, you can travel to the source of that realm and meditate on the origin of the world. It is a monumental stroke of luck. It would increase your chances of reaching sainthood by at least 30%. Even if you want to help Nangong Mingyue, it isn't something that can be done overnight. Strengthening yourself first is never a bad thing. Jiang Xuan raised his eyes and looked at him flatly. You finally said something that makes sense. I can understand your hesitation to act, since I am currently no match for you anyway. I will remember this. When I bring Mingyue back, she can decide how to handle it herself. As for those disciples, I have no interest in venting my frustrations on them. With that, Jiang Xuan left the secret realm. Zhang Changshu emerged from the void with a sigh of relief. You finally came out. You stayed in there so long I thought I'd lost my part in the story. Jiang Xuan's face darkened. Nangong Mingyue and Jiang Zhao are gone. I know, Jiang Changshu nodded. Jiang Xuan was stunned. Why didn't you stop them? How could I? Jiang Changshu shrugged. Children have their own paths to walk. It was their choice. Why would I interfere? You need to learn to let go. Jiang Xuan felt like he was choking on his own breath. The frustration finally boiled over. My wife and daughter are gone. How the hell am I supposed to just let go? Jiang Changsho rubbed his nose awkwardly and fell silent. He could see Jiang Xuan was in a terrible state and decided it was best not to provoke him further. Jiang Xuan exhaled slowly, forcing down the violent impulses in his heart. Ultimately, he couldn't blame anyone else for this. Let's go back to the Jiang family, Jiang Xuan said softly. Back now? Jiang Changsho asked, gesturing toward the longevity platform visible in the sky. Aren't you going to handle that? They've been screaming your name, practically insulting you to your face to get you to fight. Jiang Xuan glanced toward the platform, took in the situation for a fleeting second, and then looked away. No time. Take me back to the family. I need to upgrade the strength of my core followers. I am going to the Dao Saint Realm. To the Dao Saint Realm? Jiang Changsho echoed. Yes. Jiang Xuan's gaze turned cold, a murderous glint flashing in his eyes. To destroy the Qin family. Jiang Changsho was momentarily stunned. Realizing Jiang Xuan wasn't joking, his heart raced and his eyes lit up. He had just come back, and already there was a major job to do. We can do that, Jiang Changsho said, suppressing his excitement. But I have one condition. Jiang Xuan saw right through him and smiled thinly. That depends on your performance. You little brat. Jiang Changsho cursed inwardly. He had just had his treasury emptied by little Jiang Zhao, and now Jiang Xuan was trying to blackmail him too. Fine, fine, Jiang Changsho laughed it off. He waved his hand, lifting Jiang Xuan as they tore through the void toward the Jiang family estate. During the journey, Jiang Changsho remembered something. You should probably deal with those Immortal Sect disciples anyway. Not long ago, the third prince of the Great Gan died at their hands. Jiang Xuan's pupils contracted. His murderous aura spiked instantly. Without a word, he pulled out a communication scroll and crushed it, sending a message to Ming Fan. Tell King Xiao to take a trip. Take the heads of those Immortal Sect disciples and line them up outside the Great Gan Palace. And make sure they are lined up neatly. Chapter 427, King Xiao Strikes. If the divine realm is barred from violence, then a heavenly sovereign shall strike. It is as simple as that. Jiang Xuan had witnessed King Xiao's power firsthand. For a man who held the title of heavenly sovereign, slaughtering a few Immortal Sect disciples was child's play. As for the martial demonstrations on the longevity platform, Jiang Xuan could not care less. If those disciples had not been blind enough to kill Nangong Fengtian, he would never have bothered with them. You are sending that boy King Xiao? Jiang Changsho asked, momentarily stunned. Is that not a bit against the rules? Rules are for those who choose to follow them. Jiang Xuan replied calmly. What do they have to do with me? I am not participating in their martial arts display. Why would I bother with their stage? Jiang Xuan curled his lip in disdain. What era are we in that people still play these outdated games? Jiang Changsho remained silent for a beat before giving a thumbs up. You are something else, he muttered. He said no more and hurried back to the Jiang family estate. Meanwhile, in Bronze Demon City, Ming Fan stared at the communication scroll Jiang Xuan had sent. His face was a mask of confusion. Sending King Xiao? This was supposed to be a clash between the younger generation. What business did King Xiao have meddling in this? Furthermore, since Jiang Xuan had sent a message, he was clearly out of seclusion. If he was back, why not handle it himself? Ming Fan was certain that with Jiang Xuan's current strength, crushing those Immortal Sect disciples would be easy. Unable to find an answer, Ming Fan turned to King Xiao. What do you think? If Jiang Xuan asks me to strike, I strike, King Xiao said plainly. He did not overthink it. Jiang Xuan asking us for help means he still considers us allies. If we do not seize this chance to grow closer to him, we would be fools. Ming Fan nodded slowly. He had overlooked that perspective. The Jiang family now held a transcendent status. Building a good relationship with Jiang Xuan was a vital move. King Xiao stepped forward, his body dissolving into a rolling wave of killing intent as he streaked toward the longevity platform. On the platform, Yuan Yuan continued his shouting. Xiao Tianqiu and the other Immortal Sect disciples wore expressions of pure contempt. The strength of Xuantian's younger generation was far worse than they had imagined. Seeing that the local geniuses were now too terrified to challenge him, Yuan Yuan grew impatient. He sent a mental message to Xiao Tianqiu. Brother Xiao, if Jiang Xuan keeps hiding like a turtle in its shell, this is going to be a problem. He wanted to kill Jiang Xuan personally, claim the world tree seedling, and take his family to the Immortal Sect to achieve immortality. Do not worry, Xiao Tianqiu replied with a faint smile. He will come out eventually. A genius with a reputation like his must have pride. He cannot endure this for long. Besides, if he never shows, the people of Xuantian will curse him. As the young patriarch of a longevity family, he cannot allow his reputation to be dragged through the mud. Yuan Yuan nodded, finding sense in the logic. He decided to turn up the heat. He looked at the surrounding crowd and sneered. Is this truly the best Xuantian's youth can offer? Even the famous Jiang Xuan is cowering in fear. With such cowardice, you dare talk of competing in the great era? Go home and practice for another few centuries. The faces of the local geniuses darkened. their eyes burning with fury, but they had no response. The reality of their defeat was undeniable. They could only seethe in silent rage. Tianqiu decided to fan the flames higher. With a wave of his sleeve, the 5 blood-red characters stating Xuantian has no geniuses expanded 1,000 times over, filling the sky so that everyone in the realm could see them. He signaled to his fellow disciples. They understood immediately and began to chant in unison. Xuantian has no geniuses. Jiang Xuan is a coward. The sound echoed across the world, wave after wave. The geniuses standing outside the platform flushed with rage, their teeth gritted. They wanted to tear these invaders apart, to drink their blood and eat their flesh. But their strength was lacking. Many had already died, and adding their own lives to the pile seemed pointless. The atmosphere grew stifling. Was there truly no one in Xuantian who could stand against these Immortal Sect beasts? Where was Jiang Xuan? Where were Zhang Hong, Nangong Mingyue, Zhao Fuyao, and Luo Xinglan? Had they all admitted defeat and gone into hiding? In a desolate valley in the southern province, Jiang Qing and Zhang Hong bowed deeply to Jiang Wudi. Senior, we must fight. We must clear the young patriarch's name. Please, give us your permission. The 3 geniuses of the Jiang family also bowed. Please, ancestor, let us go. Go where? Jiang Wudi snapped, glaring at the 5 of them. With your current strength, what will you do? Go there to die? Or go there to embarrass Jiang Xuan? Stay put. If you truly want to help, then finish the mission Jiang Xuan gave you. Complete the task of the 10,000 heroes and increase your strength. How long has it been? In nearly 2 months, you have only finished half. Your cultivation is still weak, barely at the Tianyuan realm. You want to clear his name with that? If those Immortal Sect brats find out you are Jiang Xuan's followers, they will laugh themselves to death. The 5 lowered their heads in shame. They felt they had disgraced their leader. Without another word, they suppressed their emotions and turned to leave the valley, intent on hunting down more enemies to complete their mission faster. Jiang Wudi watched them go and sighed softly. He saw their hard work. In less than 2 months, they had defeated or killed over 5,000 opponents of the same rank. It was a staggering achievement. Moving from the earthly profound realm to the Tianyuan realm in that time was a speed that ranked among the best in Xuantian. But he could not let them go to their deaths. Most of the Immortal Sect disciples were in the Tao integration realm, and their leader was at the peak. Jiang Qing and the others simply were not ready. Jiang Wudi looked toward the longevity platform, his brow furrowed. Would Jiang Xuan fight? At the house of the immortal Zhao family, Zhao Fuyao was awakened by her kin. Her gaze pierced through the void to look at the platform for a brief moment before she closed her eyes to continue her cultivation. They're just clowns, she thought. No need to pay them any mind. At the desolate Heaven Sect, Luo Xinglan was at a critical moment in her study of ancient secret arts. She could not afford a single distraction. Huang 12, guarding the entrance, sensed the tension and decisively blocked everyone from the sect, refusing to let them disturb the goddess. I am going to kill them. Inside the immortal tower of the Facian Pavilion, Fei Xian's eyes were nearly spitting fire. If Zhang Hong had not held her back, she would have flown out already. Zhang Hong, what is wrong with you? Those beasts are going too far. Why are you stopping me? Zhang Hong ignored her struggling and gave a helpless smile. I do not know why, but the pavilion master instructed us not to interfere. He must have a reason. We must wait patiently. Rest assured, once the pavilion master gives the word, I will be the first to slaughter them. Back on the longevity platform, the mocking continued. Yuan Yuan laughed loudly. Jiang Xuan, Nangong Mingyue, if you are truly afraid. He got no further. King Shao arrived, draped in a rolling cloud of murderous energy. A streak of black light flashed, followed by a spray of crimson. Yuan Yuan's head hit the floor and rolled several times. The entire area went silent. Who had struck? The energy dissipated, revealing King Shao. He looked at Xiao Tianqiu and the others. By the order of Master Jiang, I am here to send you on your way. His voice sounded like a ghost from the abyss, cold and terrifying. King Shao blurred into motion, beginning the slaughter. Xiao Tianqiu and his companions turned pale, screaming in shock and fury. You are despicable. This is a contest for the younger generation. Why is a senior expert interfering? Has Xuantian truly lost all sense of shame? The surrounding geniuses watched with mixed emotions. Had Xuantian truly reached a point where only the old generation could fight? King Shao did not care. He did not even bother to reply. He was an invincible sovereign. Against a group of Tao integration cultivators, he was a wolf among sheep. In a matter of breaths, the slaughter was over. Amidst Xiao Tianqiu's final, desperate screams, the platform was turned into a river of blood. King Shao waved his hand, gathering the severed heads and hurling them toward the great gone imperial palace. Just as Jiang Xuan had requested, they were lined up neatly. The spectators from across Xuantian were utterly stunned. Was this actually allowed? Chapter 428. It would be better if you acted tough. Wasn't the martial arts demonstration on the longevity platform supposed to be for the younger generation? Why had an elder suddenly appeared? And by order of young Master Jiang? Was it Jiang Xuan? Associations formed quickly in the minds of the spectators, leaving them even more bewildered. Had Jiang Xuan emerged from seclusion? If he was back, why hadn't he acted personally? Before his seclusion, Jiang Xuan could already defeat those in the Tao Integration Realm while still in the Tianyuan Realm. After receiving the Earth Emperor's inheritance and meditating for so long, his strength must have improved significantly. Dealing with these Immortal Sect disciples should have been a simple task. Why send King Shao to bully the weak? The various factions couldn't quite wrap their heads around it, mostly because there was no strategic benefit to doing this. That kid is a bit too crude, the master of the Phaeacian Pavilion muttered, a bitter smile twitching on his lips. He had imagined many scenarios, and even if Jiang Xuan had personally crushed everyone on the field, he wouldn't have been surprised. But he never expected Jiang Xuan to dispatch a heavenly sovereign. In clashes like this, it was a convention that only the younger generation participated. No one broke that rule without cause. If you sent an old powerhouse to sweep the field, the other side would do the same. Eventually, it would devolve into a head-on collision between major powers, where no one gained an advantage. Ultimately, these contests were meant to nurture and motivate the youth. That was the logic behind training the troops. He had spent ages negotiating with Immortal Lord Ming Hong, and the other man's eventual concessions were based on this mutual understanding. The Immortal Sect would only send youth, and Xuantian would do the same. But Jiang Xuan didn't play by the rules. He knew King Shao of the great Ming Immortal Dynasty, a heavenly sovereign of great renown known for his overwhelming bloodlust. The problem was that the man belonged to the previous era. This was supposed to be a fight between children, and Jiang Xuan had called in an adult. The Immortal Sect would never be satisfied with this. All the Pavilion Master's previous diplomatic efforts were likely wasted. Young people are creative. It is not that strange, the Earth Emperor chuckled, seemingly unbothered. The Pavilion Master's face fell. How can you laugh? Jiang Xuan let King Shao strike, breaking the rules. The Immortal Sect will surely retaliate with everything they have. This was supposed to be a clash of youth where we had a chance to secure a slot. Now, it will be difficult. The Earth Emperor shook his head. Hard as it may be, if you push for it, there is still a chance. The Pavilion Master blinked. A chance? How? Simple, the Emperor said. You just need to act tough. The Pavilion Master was speechless. Just as the Pavilion Master feared, at the exact moment King Shao finished slaughtering the disciples, Immortal Lord Ming Hong sensed the loss. Roaring in fury, he used a great divine ability to construct a temporary spatial tunnel. A towering figure shrouded in immortal light shattered the shackles of spatial turbulence and strode through the passage. A supreme pressure surged from the tunnel, instantly weighing down upon all of Xuantian. Countless living beings felt their bodies grow heavy, as if they were carrying the weight of 5 great mountains. They could hardly breathe, and a soul-deep trembling filled their hearts. You dare to deceive me? The voice thundered from the tunnel before the figure even arrived, sounding like rolling lightning that shook the heavens and earth. Xuantian itself seemed to shudder. The hidden old monsters of the realm were startled, watching with horror. A being above a godly venerable? A saint? A saint was descending. The Pavilion Master felt a pang of misery. What a mess. He flew out immediately, mobilizing the power of the heavenly Tao to shield Xuantian and protect its people from the terrifying saintly pressure. Simultaneously, he triggered the heavenly tribulations surrounding the realm, turning them into an endless prison of lightning to block the spatial tunnel. Having done this, the Pavilion Master took a deep breath. His helplessness faded, replaced by a sharp, cold glint in his eyes as he looked toward Immortal Lord Ming Hong. Presumptuous, he shouted. Do you think Xuantian is a place for you to run riot? I advise you to leave at once. Otherwise, under the mandate of the heavenly Tao, even a saint shall face death. He followed the Earth Emperor's advice to act tough. However, his words did not intimidate Ming Hong. They only enraged him further. To Ming Hong, this man was merely a dog guarding the gate of the heavenly Tao. How dare he bark? You seek death. Ming Hong roared. The immortal light around him flared, crushing spatial barriers. His speed through the tunnel increased several times over. He feared Xuantian's heavenly Tao, but that didn't mean he would tolerate a gatekeeper yelling in his face. The Pavilion Master grew anxious. If the opponent actually descended, it would be a failure on his part. Though the heavenly Tao would eventually awaken and expel the intruder, the Pavilion Master's career would likely be over. Think of something. He sent a desperate mental plea to the Earth Emperor. Standing beneath the old locust tree, the Emperor watched the scene but made no move to intervene. He seemed to see something the others couldn't, and merely shook his head with a smile. At that moment, a Tao seal rose from the Tao Saint realm, cutting through the firmament and plunging into the depths of space. It constructed a spatial corridor between the Tao Saint realm and Xuantian. Strangely, this corridor blocked Ming Hong's path. The Tao war has begun. Xuantian must not be interfered with. A hazy figure appeared, looking coldly at Ming Hong. Unless your immortal sect wishes to forfeit the first battle. Ming Hong's expression darkened. He looked deeply at the figure and then at the Pavilion Master. His killing intent flared. He suspected the two of them had conspired beforehand. He could not forfeit. The slots were vital. Each was essentially a chance at sainthood. There were only 5, and the Immortal Sect could not give up even one. I will not interfere with the Tao War, Minghong said grimly. Once I have slain this creature and settled our debt, I will leave. I care nothing for the grievances between the Immortal Sect and Xuantian, the hazy figure replied with a faint smile. Since you chose Xuantian as the site for the first battle, you must follow the rules. Until a winner is decided, you cannot interfere. Do you dare to arrogantly defy the will of the Heavenly Tao? He threw Minghong's own logic back at him. You. Minghong's eyes widened in fury. These cowards in Xuantian have no honor. They sent an elder to hunt our youth. How can our disciples participate in the Tao War under these conditions? That is a problem for your Immortal Sect, the hazy figure laughed. What does it have to do with me? If they cannot participate, then forfeit and give the first slot to my Tao Sect. I certainly won't stop you then. Minghong cursed inwardly. This was blatant extortion. Do not be so smug, Minghong said coldly. To these Xuantian locals, there is no difference between my Immortal Sect and your Tao Sect. You are both outsiders. If they can shamelessly slaughter my disciples, they will do the same to yours. The hazy figure merely smiled and ignored him. The Pavilion Master, overhearing the conversation, felt a spark of inspiration. The Earth Emperor's advice to act tough echoed in his mind. He realized how profound that statement truly was. Screw it. The Pavilion Master gritted his teeth and went all in. He looked at Minghong and spoke with feigned composure. Xuantian treats all visitors equally. Disciples from the Tao Saint Realm may only use force on the longevity platform. Otherwise, they will be struck down by heavenly tribulation. However, I am just a gatekeeper. I cannot control what the people of Xuantian think or do. If they despise your disciples and insist on bullying them with superior age and power, I have no authority to stop them. The subtext was clear. Tao Sect disciples would be safe from elder interference, but Immortal Sect disciples were going to have a very hard time. Bastard. Minghong was incensed, his voice booming with saintly power. The hazy figure waved a hand to dissipate the pressure and laughed. It seems your Immortal Sect isn't very popular. Minghong seethed. He could see now that these two had clearly coordinated to suppress the Immortal Sect and steal the first slot. Having seen through the plot, he retracted his anger and lowered his gaze. What are your conditions? He asked. Since they had staged this performance, they clearly wanted to extort him. The Pavilion Master was overjoyed, his heart pounding. It was actually working. He maintained a calm facade. A slot. Allow Xuantian's younger generation to participate in the competition for the first slot. Minghong narrowed his eyes, looking deeply at the Pavilion Master before turning to the hazy figure. He wondered what Xuantian had offered the Tao Sect to make them agree to such a ridiculous demand. However, he could accept this condition. Even if they participated, how could the youth of a small place like Xuantian compare to the Immortal Sect? The previous massacre was proof enough. It wasn't just a difference in cultivation, but a total gap in power levels. Letting them play would change nothing. In the end, it would still be a fight between the Immortal Sect and the Tao Sect. Fine, Minghong said. But I have one condition of my own. He looked down at the Pavilion Master. Jiang Xuan must participate. After all, the reason he had chosen Xuantian for this battle was to claim Jiang Xuan's head and the world tree seedling he carried. Chapter 4:29. Heavenly Sovereigns? I might just kill a couple to find out. Furthermore, they lacked a pioneer like Jiang Xuan to push them forward. As preparations reached a fever pitch across the realm, the situation at the Jiang family estate was quite different. Is that it? Jiang Xuan asked, holding the life spirit by the scruff of its neck. I have so many people here. What am I supposed to do with just a few wisps of life essence? The life spirit pulled its head back, its forepaws flailing in the air as if waving a frantic white flag. Master, my dear master. Old Green has only been awake for a short while. It took everything I had to save up this much. I am tapped out truly. I do not have a single drop left. It had worked tirelessly to accumulate 10 wisps of life essence. It had only managed that much because the world tree, whether out of pity or annoyance at the spirit's uselessness, had granted it a surge of energy. Otherwise, even 5 wisps would have been a stretch. 5 had already been used to save the young master's life, and now Jiang Xuan was squeezing out the remaining 5. Old Green was officially bankrupt. Are you sure there is nothing left? Jiang Xuan frowned. Absolutely certain. I swear, if I am lying to you, may the heavens strike me down with 5 bolts of lightning. The life spirit tried to beat its chest to prove its sincerity, but its paws were too short to reach. It could only flail helplessly. Fine. I will believe you for now. Jiang Xuan tossed the spirit aside. Holding the 5 wisps of life essence, he turned to Ancestor Shan and the others. This is all we have. How do you all want to divide this? Ancestor Shan and the others shared a smile. Life essence is a miracle of creation, Ancestor Shan said with a chuckle. It can reshape the soul and restore vitality. It is a rare treasure that cannot be sought through effort alone. You should be happy you have 5 wisps. Do not be so greedy. Indeed, Fuzi added. 5 wisps are enough to bring 5 experts on the brink of death back to their peak. That is the equivalent of having 5 supreme powerhouses backing you who can strike at any time. For now, it is plenty. The Tao Ancestor, the Red Lotus Sword Immortal, and the Black Yin Lute Maiden all agreed. Because Jiang Xuan's acquisition of human providence had increased significantly, the repairs on the human tablet had progressed. Figures like the Red Lotus Sword Immortal, whose imprints were previously tied to the tablet, could now briefly manifest in the physical world. The young king should not worry, the Red Lotus Sword Immortal said. We are but lingering soul imprints. Without the power of the human tablet, we would have vanished long ago. To be able to walk under this sky and breathe fresh air is enough for us. We would not dare dream of using life essence to reshape our souls. Besides, with the life spirit here, there will be more in the future. We have survived thousands of years of loneliness. A little more waiting is nothing. The others echoed her sentiment. They were effectively turning down the life essence so that Ancestor Shan and Fu Zi could use it. The deeper reason, however, was that a single wisp was a mere drop in the bucket for them. It might solidify their souls slightly, but to truly reshape their spirits and live a second life, they would need at least 100 wisps each. Their past cultivation levels were simply too high. They didn't mention this to Jiang Xuan, wanting to avoid putting extra pressure on him. Jiang Xuan nodded. He didn't know the exact requirements, but the logic made sense. As long as he could gather enough energy for the life spirit in the future, he didn't mind waiting. He proceeded to distribute the wisps. One of Fu Zi. His soul had been nurtured almost to completion. With the life essence and a few divine objects, he would be able to reconstruct his physical body and regain significant power. 3 wisps went to Ancestor Shan, the ancient ancestor, and another Jiang family ancestor whose situation mirrored theirs, a decaying body and dried-up vitality, sealed within the divine tomb. According to Ancestor Shan, that particular ancestor's cultivation surpassed even their own. With the life essence, these 3 could quickly return to their peak states. This meant the Jiang family would soon have 3 God Realm powerhouses at their absolute prime. Even excluding Jiang Xuan's parents, the family now had the confidence to face the turbulent currents of the Great Era. The final wisp was taken by the Tao Ancestor. His condition was not as good as Fu Zi's, but he was far stronger than the Sword Immortal and the others. While it wouldn't reshape his soul, it would solidify his spirit by 30% and restore a portion of his combat strength. It might not seem like much for daily use, but if the Jiang family faced a crisis, he could burn his soul to unleash a single strike comparable to a saint to annihilate an enemy. After the distribution, the ancestors departed. Jiang Xuan gathered his personal followers. Under Fu Zi's strict tutelage and the infusion of massive resources, the dozens of geniuses had made great strides. Most had reached the earthly profound realm, and 5 had even touched the Tianyuan realm. While they still trailed behind the elite tier, they were now capable of making a name for themselves in the world. Jiang Xuan produced the treasures, purified magic crystals, and herbs he had gathered from the demon dens and the Earth Emperor's realm. He distributed them to the group and gave them a stern look. I do not require you to keep pace with me, he said. I only require that when the Jiang family needs you, you have the strength to stand up. With that, he dismissed them. Jiang Changsho stepped out from the void and sat beside the pensive Jiang Xuan. He sighed and spoke softly. The master of the Phaeacian Pavilion has reached an agreement. Our geniuses can join the Tao war to fight for the slots. But there is one requirement. You must participate. What are your thoughts? Jiang Changsho asked. Me? Jiang Xuan came back to himself. He thought it over and quickly saw through the scheme. He let out a cold laugh. They want me to participate because they want the world tree seedling I am carrying? Most likely, Jiang Changsho nodded. I was planning on going to the Tao Saint Realm anyway, Jiang Xuan said calmly. Since those slots have been hand-delivered to me, I might as well take one while I am at it. The Tao Saint Realm is not like Xuantian, Jiang Changsho warned. Their prodigies are generally much stronger. The very best have already stepped into the God Realm. Even with the heavenly Tao mandates in Xuantian, it is clear that the disciples from the Immortal and Tao sects will include sovereigns. It is even possible they will send heavenly sovereigns. He looked at Jiang Xuan with genuine curiosity. How was your harvest during this seclusion? Do you have the confidence to face a heavenly sovereign? Jiang Xuan stood up and looked out into the vast, empty sky. His gaze grew deep. A heavenly sovereign? He mused. I have never tried it. I might just kill a couple to find out. Chapter 430. The power of a plate of vegetables. What was that? Jiang Changsho froze, struggling to process the words. Kill a couple of heavenly sovereigns to find out. He distinctly remembered the boy's cultivation level being in the Tianyuan realm before he entered seclusion. After a single session of meditation, he was talking about leaping across 2 major realms. Did you overdose on pills? Jiang Changsho asked, his skepticism rising as a natural reflex. I did not take any damn pills. Jiang Xuan rolled his eyes and explained slowly. After some guidance from Senior Earth Emperor, I had a sudden epiphany. I stepped into a new domain, and my strength increased quite a bit. The most superficial change was his cultivation, which had reached the peak of the Tao integration realm. That plate of vegetables provided by the Earth Emperor contained a mysterious rhythm of the great Tao. Its primary purpose was to help him perceive a higher state of being, but it also bolstered his cultivation along the way. Furthermore, That chaotic space had been filled with incredibly pure energy. With his comprehension soaring and a nearly infinite supply of energy, his level naturally rose. Then there was the progress in his mastery of the Tao. While his lightning Tao had already touched the power of the great Tao on the path of thunder tribulation, his sword Tao and fire Tao had now successfully followed suit. Setting aside the fact that his comprehension had exploded exponentially under the influence of the great Tao's rhythm, the terrifying leap in his sword Tao was thanks to his own latent talent, a talent he had yet to fully tap into. He suspected this was inherited from his father. After all, ancestor Jiang Xuan had mentioned that his father was revered as the longevity sword god. The massive boost to his fire Tao came from the feedback he received from Nangong Mingyue's advancement. She had first comprehended and mastered the power of the fire Tao before accepting the strength of the Phoenix destiny. The feedback granted to him was immense. Mastery of fire Tao power was only the beginning. His vermilion bird holy body had leaped from the small success stage to the great success stage. Finally, there was the solar divine fire. It had grown from a single wisp into a full-fledged flame. What did that mean in practical terms? Forget geniuses of the same rank. Even an established Tao integration expert with 10,000 years of experience could be killed easily with a single burst of this fire. He had not tested it against a sovereign, but he doubted many possessed the means to withstand the solar divine fire. A complete solar divine fire held supreme quality. Though it was currently just a single cluster, its power was already comparable to the absolute. However, the greatest harvest from his 2 months of seclusion was something else entirely. It was his state of being. It was not a cultivation rank or a mastery of the Tao, but the mysterious level of his very life force. It was often said that there was a natural gap in the quality and hierarchy of life between the weak and the strong. Jiang Xuan had never truly understood this until now. This seclusion had finally given him a clear perspective. It started with mortals who were ignorant of the Tao, then moved to those below the God realm who sought and touched the 3,000 great Taoists. Above them were those in the God realm who perceived and mastered the laws of the universe. Then came the Saint realm. At this stage, one proved their own path and became the master of a Tao. Every action became an expression of the Tao itself. There was no longer a need to borrow power from heaven and earth, nor were they bound by its constraints. This was the absolute, where the quality of one's life was equal to that of the universe. Nangong Mingyue had achieved the status of a candidate fire Tao lord by merging with heavenly fire. In essence, she had gained the qualification to prove her path and become a saint. Beyond that stage was the act of validating one's path against the order of the universe, leading to a leap in life quality that cast off the shackles of destiny to achieve transcendence. This was the state of the supreme. True transcendence was a rare feat in the vast river of time. Those who achieved it were like a single grain of salt in a vast ocean. Under the guidance of the Earth Emperor, Jiang Xuan had already set foot on the path of proving the self. In other words, he had bypassed the conventional God realm and taken a firm first step toward the supreme level of the Saint realm. This process was destined to be incredibly difficult, akin to carving a path through a mountain. He lacked the deep foundation usually accumulated through the stages of the God realm. Simply put, while others raised their cultivation to the level of a heavenly god or godly venerable before trying to master their own Tao, Jiang Xuan was running both tracks in parallel. He was raising his cultivation while simultaneously proving his path. The pros and cons were obvious. The benefit was that the barriers between major realms, which others found insurmountable, were almost non-existent for him. The downside was that because he was taking such a massive leap, every single step would be agonizingly difficult. By skipping the process of mastering the universe's laws and instead relying solely on his own Tao, he was attempting a feat as difficult as climbing the heavens. It was only because he had already mastered the power of 3 separate Taos while still in the Tao integration realm, reaching a level of comprehension comparable to a false god, that he could even attempt such a ridiculous path. Of course, this was only possible because of his monstrous comprehension. He had yet to even fully unlock his true potential. He was not just a descendant of the Jiang family with 95% bloodline purity. He was the son of the longevity sword god, Jiang Xuan, and the goddess of the great brilliance, Manhua. He also carried the ancestral inheritance which held endless mysteries. To top it all off, he had the assistance of his unique system. Anyone else, even top-tier geniuses like the saint's grandson Lu Fengqi or the divine son of the Xinyuan royal family, would not even find the door to this path, let alone walk it. Jiang Xuan briefly explained his progress to Jiang Changshu. The old man's jaw dropped. Silence followed for a long time. Changshu looked utterly defeated. He went from sitting to curling his legs up into a ball, his entire body radiating an aura of profound loneliness. Jiang Qingtian, draped in his silver-white cloak, descended from the void. He approached and handed the protection of the gods, which he had retrieved from the god-demon ruins, to Jiang Xuan. Seeing his junior brother curled up in a ball, he asked with surprise, "What is wrong with him? Who knows? Maybe spring is coming?" Jiang Xuan replied casually. He carefully put away the protection of the gods. According to his mother, this item appeared to be a true god weapon, but was actually a key to a great secret. There were 7 such keys in total. He now had 2. Spring is coming? Jiang Xuan blinked. It is only October. Winter has not even arrived yet. People always yearn for spring. Jiang Xuan glanced at the moping ancestor Changshu and teased. When spring comes, everything wakes up. It is the season when animals mate. Jiang Qingtian's face darkened. He understood the joke, but he was more shocked than amused. With a look of disdain, he gave Jiang Changshu a light kick. I have to say, at your age, you are still thinking about that nonsense? Changshu remained immersed in his gloom and did not respond. This left Jiang Qingtian even more baffled. Which old lady has you so preoccupied? The one from the Zhao family. Through the loose lips of the girl Jiang Zhao, he had heard rumors about the complicated history between Jiang Changshu and Granny 7 Stars of the Zhao family. He had even spent 10 extra Dao herbs to get the full story. Everyone loves a bit of gossip, especially when it concerns their own junior brother. But looking at Changshu now, the state he was in did not match the version of the story he had heard. Had that girl sold him a fake story? Jiang Xuan was also surprised. He smiled and asked, you know about this too, ancestor? The Jiang family is only so big. What can stay hidden from me? Jiang Qingtian feigned indifference. He could hardly admit he had paid for gossip and ended up with a dud. It was hard to reconcile this man, who was essentially a gossip-hungry bystander, with the legend of Jiang Qingtian, the hulking, overbearing figure in a silver cloak who could split the sky with a single blade. The contrast was far too sharp. Stand up. Jiang Qingtian kicked Changshu again, perhaps trying to maintain his dominant persona. What do you look like squatting there? Have some dignity. It is the Zhao woman, right? Your senior brother will go and kidnap her for you right now. Jiang Changshu looked up at Jiang Qingtian. His expression was filled with resentment. At that moment, his eyes did all the talking, and the words were likely very foul. Jiang Xuan could not hold it in any longer. He turned his head away, terrified that he would burst out laughing. The frustration and killing intent he had been harboring began to melt away. Changshu glanced at the stifled Jiang Xuan and felt a bit relieved. He looked back at Jiang Qingtian, who was standing tall and majestic, looking every bit the imperial conqueror. Changshu curled his lip. Stop posing in front of me. Jiang Changshu then repeated every word of Jiang Xuan's progress to Jiang Qingtian. Then, Jiang Qingtian also squatted down and curled into a ball. He radiated the exact same aura of profound loneliness, and perhaps just a hint of melancholy. A long time passed. The setting sun cast a blood-red glow over the two of them. Jiang Qingtian smacked his lips and sighed. Life is quite meaningless, isn't it? Yeah, Jiang Changshu sighed softly. Why isn't winter here yet? Chapter 431. The Dao War begins. The Dao War was imminent, and every faction was preparing at a feverish pace. Across the vast Dao Saint realm, undercurrents surged as various powers mobilized. Many hidden prodigies finally surfaced, revealing terrifying levels of strength that left onlookers trembling. Within the 36 domains of the Dao Sect, the holy sons and divine maidens of the hegemon powers, along with the core elite of the 3 sects and 4 families, had gathered. Among these thousands of geniuses, the baseline cultivation was at the peak of the Dao integration realm. Nearly half had already stepped into the sovereign stage. There were even 3 monsters among them who bore the title of Heavenly Sovereign. The Immortal Sect followed a similar pattern. The elites they deployed were, on paper, a perfect match for those of the Dao Sect. Notably, the Immortal Sect boasted 108 true disciples, each possessing top-tier talent. Even the one ranked last possessed an innate Dao body and combat prowess so fierce they had personally tasted the blood of multiple sovereigns. For this war, 72 of these 108 disciples were mobilized. The Immortal Sect was not holding back. It was simply that the top 36 had already entered the God realm, exceeding the cultivation limit for entry. At the Dao Sect, in front of the Taiching Dao Palace, the contingent representing the sect had finished assembling. 303 people stood ready, led by the 3 heavenly sovereigns. These leaders were Song Kuang, a true disciple of the sky-snatching Holy Land, Gu Qingbei, a true disciple of the Taihing Grotto Heaven, and Sima Xing, the prodigy of the Sima family. The 3 stood at the forefront, their robes fluttering as the laws of the great Dao swirled around them in brilliant divine light. Their oppressive auras weighed heavy on the square, clashing with one another in a silent display of rivalry. You are a defeated opponent. Why do you have to stand beside me? Sima Xing cast a contemptuous glance at Song Kuang, his voice dripping with mockery. Song Kuang glanced back with a calm expression. He did not offer a verbal retort. Instead, he slowly extended his right hand. Misty Dao laws converged instantly, forming a massive hand that blotted out the sky as it reached towards Sima Xing. This movement felt like a god reaching down to crush an ant in the dust, leaving everyone with a staggering sense of their own insignificance. The hand did not move quickly, yet it carried a powerful binding field that made evasion impossible. The destructive energy it held was even more shocking. Everywhere it passed, matter was annihilated into an endless darkness. Sima Xing's eyes twitched. He hurriedly summoned his defenses to block the strike. A thunderous boom shook the earth. Sima Xing managed to hold his ground, but he looked disheveled. He stared at Song Kuang with a hint of alarm on his face. The sky-snatching hand. You actually mastered it? Shock rippled through the crowd. The gazes directed at Song Kuang were now filled with wariness. The sky-snatching hand was a top-tier saint technique and the core inheritance of the sky-snatching Holy Land. It was famous throughout the Dao Saint realm for its limitless killing power. Song Kuang was already a heavenly sovereign. With this technique, his combat power had surged by at least 30%. He could likely hold his own against a false god. Song Kuang looked at Sima Xing with a faint, calm smile. One should always be prepared for a friend to surpass them after a short absence. Sima Xing, you are falling behind. Sima Xing's expression soured. His eyes grew dark and his heart heavy. Although they were all fighting for the Dao sect, they were still competitors. This was true even within the Dao war itself. After all, the first battle would only yield a single heavenly Dao slot. How would so many of them divide it? It would ultimately come down to individual ability. The plan was to present a united front against the Immortal Sect, but once the rivals were dead, it would be every man for himself. And now, Song Kuang had pulled ahead. Suddenly, the gates of the Taiching Dao Palace swung open. The Great Elder of the Council of Elders stepped out. Greetings, Great Elder. The crowd straightened up, quickly casting aside their private thoughts to bow in unison. The Great Elder nodded, his gaze sweeping over the group to gauge their strength. Our Dao sect and the Immortal Sect have harbored deep enmity for tens of millions of years, he began calmly. We are locked in a struggle where only one can survive. Therefore, you should all be well aware of the purpose of this Dao war. The geniuses took on a solemn air and shouted as one. Kill. The air grew cold with slaughterous intent. Correct. The Great Elder's expression turned icy. Kill. Slaughter every last one of those Immortal Sect beasts. The Heavenly Dao slots are merely an incidental reward, a method used by the Heavenly Dao to prevent the Dao Saint realm from falling into total chaos. While they are precious opportunities to achieve sainthood, do not let greed blind you. Do not forget the principles of our Dao sect or the true reason you are entering this war. As he spoke, he directed a meaningful look towards Sima Xing, his eyes heavy with pressure and warning. Sima Xing's face went pale. He quickly lowered his head, his back drenched in cold sweat. The elder shifted his gaze to Song Kuang and Gu Qingbei, who also looked down in trepidation. The Great Elder withdrew his gaze, feeling a flicker of frustration. The Dao sect was not like the Immortal Sect. There, Immortal Lord Minghong ruled everything and could enforce strict rules, killing anyone who disobeyed. The Dao sect was an alliance of various powers. The three Dao lords spent their time wandering the world, rarely showing their faces even to the elders. Without a supreme power to suppress the factions, it was impossible to rule with the absolute authority of Minghong. They descended and landed on the square. Led by the prodigy Nangong Qingshi, they bowed to the Great Elder. By the order of Ancestor Qingyuan, I, Nangong Qingshi, have brought the elites of the Nangong family to fight for the Dao sect and hunt the Immortal Sect. Song Kuang, Sima Xing, and the others were stunned. They stared at Nangong Qingshi in disbelief. Why would the Nangong family send him? The Immortal Sect. Inside the Longevity Immortal Hall, 72 true disciples stood at the front, followed by the geniuses of various allied factions, 450 in total. 4 individuals stood out like cranes among chickens, standing proudly at the very front. All 4 bore the title of Heavenly Sovereign. Immortal Lord Minghong sat high upon his throne, looking down with half-closed eyes. For this Dao war, the bounties remain active. Kill without restraint. There will be no shortage of rewards. Slaying Jiang Xuan or Nangong Mingyue will earn you a saint weapon. Whoever brings me the world tree seedling shall have their entire clan ascended to immortality. The crowd erupted in excitement, their eyes burning with greed. However, Minghong's voice turned icy. The hall fell into instant silence. The temperature seemed to drop to absolute zero, striking fear into the hearts of everyone present. Keep your petty schemes in check and pull in the same direction. If internal strife breaks out during the war, do not blame me for exterminating your entire clan. The geniuses trembled and bowed. We obey the Immortal Lord's command. Minghong waved his hand, sending 4 immortal charms into the hands of the 4 leading heavenly sovereigns. Once the war begins, use these to contact the Yao family in the Xuantian Realm. They have defected to our side. Their disciples will provide intelligence from within and coordinate with you when necessary. You will decide the specifics of the operation. Understood. The 4 heavenly sovereigns bowed, though they were secretly dismissive. With their strength, they expected to crush the trash of Xuantian easily. According to the reports, even Jiang Xuan was only in the Tianyuan realm. Even if he broke through during his seclusion, he wouldn't be able to withstand a single punch. They viewed the Yao family simply as a convenient GPS to save them the time of hunting people down. Soon, the 4 leaders led the Immortal Sect host toward the Xuantian realm. The Longevity Yao family. Because of their blood feud with the Jiang family, they had been ostracized and targeted by various forces in Xuantian looking to curry favor with the Jiangs. Fortunately, the Yao family's divine mountain was situated within a spatial rift between the divine provinces. Without supreme protective treasures, even a false god could not stay there for long, which kept the angry mobs at bay. Ironically, a location they had chosen out of arrogance had become their saving grace. In the main hall, Patriarch Yao Tiangang looked at his family's youth with a dark expression. My son, Yao Wuxian, died because of Jiang Xuan. Even our ancestors' weapon, the martial god spear, cannot be recovered. Our family has no successor and no strength left to compete for the era. This is an irreconcilable feud that must be paid for in Jiang blood. The Yao geniuses lowered their heads, feeling a mix of emotions. I know some of you feel resentful, thinking that only my son died, and it has nothing to do with you, Yao Tiangang said, his voice cold and sharp. That is human nature. I do not blame you. But the Tao war is at hand. This is our opportunity, a chance for every one of you to touch a monumental destiny. The youths looked up in confusion. The Immortal Sect. Yao Tiangang sent dozens of immortal charms into the bodies of the disciples. When the war begins, you will assist the Immortal Sect in hunting Jiang Xuan and the other Xuantian geniuses. If you succeed, our entire clan will join the Immortal Sect. You, the meritorious officials, will become inner disciples of the Immortal Sect. I don't need to tell you how powerful they are. He saw the light of ambition ignite in their eyes and smiled. The Immortal Sect occupies half of the vast Tao Saint realm. That says everything. As inner disciples, your path will be limitless. Our family will return to its peak, destroy the Jiang family, and dominate Xuantian. The disciples bowed deeply. We obey the Patriarch. We will assist the Immortal Sect with all our strength. Good. Go. For the time that remains, the family's entire treasury is open to you. As the disciples filed out, the elders sitting on the sidelines looked uneasy. The third elder hesitated before stepping forward. Patriarch, the great elder has heard of our situation from his cell. He requests that you go and speak with him. Yao Tiangong's brow furrowed in disgust. What is there to talk about? Tell him to stay quiet and stop worrying about things that don't concern him. Otherwise, he can stay in there forever. The third elder winced, but continued. The great elder said he has a way to lead the Yao family out of this crisis and resolve our feud with the Jiang family. Bastard. Yao Tiangang exploded in rage, slamming his hand onto his chair. The Yao and Jiang families are locked in a fight to the death. There is no room for reconciliation. For the great elder to speak for the Jiang family, what are his intentions? Men, go and send the great elder on his final journey. Chapter 433. The Jiang family tradition of living off women. While the Tao and Immortal Sects were making their deployments, the various forces of Xuantian were also actively preparing. Thanks to the massive supply of resources from the Phoenix Pavilion, many experts at the Tao integration and even sovereign levels had emerged on the longevity stage. However, there was still a clear gap between them and the disciples of the Immortal and Tao sects. This left the master of the Phoenix Pavilion feeling helpless. Even with an all-encompassing supply of cultivation resources, he could not force growth overnight. It was impossible to make the geniuses of Xuantian surpass those of the Tao Saint Realm in just 1 month. Consequently, he placed all his hopes on Jiang Xuan to turn the tide and suppress the opposition during the Tao War. As it stood, Jiang Xuan was likely Xuantian's only hope for victory. To support him, the master had taken nearly 1/3 of the Phoenix Pavilion's entire treasury and sent it to the Jiang family. How staggering was 1/3 of the Phoenix Pavilion's storage? There were over several hundred Tao herbs alone. King herbs and great herbs were too numerous to count. There were more than 10 true god weapons. There were even 2 saint weapons and a fragmented saint herb. The Phoenix Pavilion had truly emptied its pockets. This was partly for the sake of Xuantian and partly to help Jiang Xuan win the war and secure the Heavenly Tao slot. Of course, it also served as an apology. The master had agreed to Immortal Lord Ming Hong's demands and thrust Jiang Xuan into the war without prior consultation. At the Divine Peak where Jiang Xuan resided, Jiang Hong and Fei Xian returned from the pavilion. They placed a storage ring filled with vast resources into Jiang Xuan's hand. The master asked me to convey his apologies, Jiang Hong said. He sent these to you in the hope that you can defeat the 2 sects, claim victory, and uphold the prestige of Xuantian. Jiang Xuan swept his divine sense through the ring. His brows rose in surprise at the master's generosity. The other items were one thing, but 2 saint weapons and a fragmented saint herb were treasures almost never seen in the Xuantian realm. Tell the old man to relax, Jiang Xuan said, putting the ring away with an air of indifference. I am not in the mood to blame him. Hearing this, Fei Xian curled her lip in annoyance. Hey, what kind of attitude is that? My great-grandfather sent you so many treasures. You could at least say thank you. Jiang Hong nudged her with his elbow and whispered for her not to cause trouble. Jiang Xuan looked at them and then focused on Jiang Hong. He began to sense a certain flavor to the situation. If that old man at the Phoenix Pavilion felt guilty, why didn't he come himself or send Fei Xian? Why send Jiang Hong to represent him? Has this pretty boy actually succeeded in his role? Is the Phaeacian Pavilion going to be surnamed Jiang in the future? With that thought, Jiang Xuan smiled. His tone turned playful as he laughed. If you two actually make it work, never mind a thank you. I will consider these items your wedding gift. Jiang Hong immediately looked embarrassed. Phaeacian's face turned bright red with shame. However, given her personality, she wasn't about to back down easily. She straightened her neck and stared back at Jiang Xuan. Who cares about your wedding gift? She huffed. I only have one requirement. You can take Jiang Hong to the Dao War, but you must take me along too. I have no objection, Jiang Xuan chuckled. It just depends on whether Jiang Hong is willing to part with you. He won't disagree, Phaeacian said, puffing out her chest proudly. My Xiao Hong listens to everything I say. Jiang Xuan paused and turned to Jiang Hong with an inquiring look. Are you really willing to take your woman to a slaughterhouse of a battlefield? Jiang Hong remained silent. Jiang Xuan's lip twitched. He offered a silent prayer for the man. It seemed the fine tradition of the Jiang family had been successfully passed down. What is your current cultivation? Jiang Xuan asked. I just broke through to the 6th level of the Dao integration realm a few days ago, Jiang Hong replied honestly. Can you fight a sovereign? It is not difficult. What about a heavenly sovereign? Jiang Xuan pressed. Jiang Hong hesitated for a moment before slowly shaking his head. I have not tried. Then that means you can't, Jiang Xuan noted with a grin. That is only normal. If you could beat a heavenly sovereign at the 6th level of Dao integration, I would have to give you my position as young patriarch. Inwardly, however, he was impressed. A child of destiny was truly different. Their power was staggering. If he didn't have his own advantages, he might not truly be able to best Jiang Hong. What do you mean by that? Phaeacian interjected, glaring fiercely at Jiang Xuan to protect her man. Jiang Hong only said he hasn't tried. It doesn't mean he would definitely lose. Besides, you have me. A heavenly sovereign is nothing. I can handle it easily. Jiang Xuan looked at Jiang Hong again, seeking confirmation. Jiang Hong nodded with a look of slight helplessness. Phaeacian has a unique constitution and has been meticulously taught by the master. Her strength is not inferior to mine. In terms of sheer foundation, she actually surpasses me. Facing a heavenly sovereign, she does have some confidence. Jiang Xuan fell silent. He reached out and patted Jiang Hong on the shoulder. Brother, my condolences. He wasn't surprised by Phaeacian's strength. He was simply sympathizing with Jiang Hong. This wasn't just inheriting the family tradition. He was taking it to a whole new level. Hey, what is that supposed to mean? Phaeacian snapped, sensing the hidden meaning in Jiang Xuan's words. Nothing, nothing. Jiang Xuan waved his hand. It is quite good. Jiang Hong's mouth twitched. He found it difficult to adapt to Jiang Xuan's banter and decided to bring the conversation back to the main point. In this Dao War, the disciples from the Immortal and Dao sects will be at the Dao integration realm at the very least. Most will likely be sovereigns. The master believes that only you can serve as Xuantian's main force to secure victory. He wants Phaeacian and me to assist you in winning that heavenly Dao slot. You summoned me back for this reason as well, I assume. So, how much certainty do you have? Phaeacian also put aside her annoyance and looked at Jiang Xuan with curiosity. She wanted to know how strong this man, the one who had surpassed her Xiaohong, really was. Could he represent Xuantian and slap the faces of those Immortal Sect beasts? Her great-grandfather had warned them that the enemy forces would definitely include heavenly sovereigns. Jiang Xuan smiled, but his eyes held a chilling coldness that made the heart tremble. Certainty? This is a war. We just kill. Once they are all dead, the victory is ours. While the other factions were preparing, he was making his own deployments. There was no reason to turn down a free heavenly Dao slot. However, he wasn't so arrogant as to think he could storm the war alone. The Dao War was a clash of factions, a brawl between camps. If that was the case, he would simply call upon his own people. Jiang Hong was one. The others were likely already on their way. Chapter 434. The Dao War approaches. Greetings, Brother Jiang. Lu Fengqi and his 4 companions bowed in unison. Upon receiving Jiang Xuan's message, they had dropped everything to rush from the Forbidden Life Zone. Despite several stubborn ancestors trying to block their path, claiming they should not meddle in the affairs of the Dao War, Lu Fengqi had effectively silenced them with the threat of waking up Grandpa. Under the protection of the Xianyuan clan's ancestor, they reached the Jiang family at breakneck speed. Impressive. You certainly didn't waste any time, Jiang Xuan said, raising an eyebrow with a light chuckle. He cast a subtle glance at the elderly man standing behind them. Clad in golden robes, the elder's aura was profound and restrained, giving Jiang Xuan an intuitive sense of power even more terrifying than that of Jiang Changshu. His cultivation had likely reached the heavenly god realm. These 5 rascals might not have shown their full potential yet, but their status was staggering. To have a heavenly god acting as a personal bodyguard was a luxury even Jiang Xuan had not yet been granted. Jiang Changshu stepped out from the void to stand beside Jiang Xuan. His expression was calm, but his gaze lingered on the golden-robed elder with a hint of caution. The ancient humans of the Forbidden Life Zone were mysterious and unpredictable. Their true strength and intentions remained unknown. Even if they arrived as invited guests, prudence was necessary. The golden-robed elder kept his eyes lowered, appearing frail and aged. He seemed entirely indifferent to Jiang Changshuo's wariness. While the Jiang family was formidable, boasting a new true god like Jiang Changshuo and a mysterious powerhouse capable of crushing divine venerables, the elder was not overly concerned. After all, a saint slept within the depths of the forbidden life zone. As long as neither side crossed the other, they could coexist. This was exactly why he and the other old fellows had initially opposed Lu Fengqi and the others coming to help. The Dao War was essentially a struggle between the Dao Sect and the Immortal Sect of the Dao Saint Realm. The Heavenly Dao slots were their designated prizes. Given the current strength of Xuantian's youth, what right did they have to interfere? To an expert of his level, it was obvious that Jiang Xuan was the main pillar of Xuantian and their only hope for victory. But could he truly succeed? The elder found it hard to be optimistic. The gap between the Xuantian realm and the Dao Saint realm was an absolute chasm that could not be bridged overnight. Relying on Jiang Xuan alone was like trying to patch the sky with a single stone. Furthermore, even if they won, what then? There was only one Heavenly Dao slot, and it would surely go to Jiang Xuan. Lu Fengqi and the others stood to gain nothing. With the Great Era approaching, Xuantian was destined for a radical transformation. These 5 youths should be focusing on accumulating strength and raising their realms so they could lead the human race against the coming tides of invasion and chaos. Helping Jiang Xuan now seemed like a thankless, high-risk task. Brother Jiang invited us. How could we not come? Lu Fengqi laughed, making no effort to hide his motives. Opportunities to have Brother Jiang owe us a favor are rare. If we miss this chance, there might not be another. Kuin Wu, Gu Shintong, and the others nodded in firm agreement. Jiang Xuan was an asset with limitless potential. Investing in a deeper friendship now was a move that carried no risk and infinite rewards. They weren't about to let their ancestors' outdated caution stop them from seizing such a clear opportunity. You are certainly blunt about it, Jiang Xuan laughed. That is just a testament to our friendship. Lu Fengqi replied. Jiang Xuan had to admit that Lu Fengqi had a way with words, skillfully bridging the gap between them. He's a clever one, Jiang Xuan thought. Strong, and knows exactly what to say. Lu Fengqi was only the second person he had met with such social grace, the first being Prince Ming Fan of the Great Ming Immortal Dynasty. Suddenly, Xianyuan Tua spoke up with an abrupt question. Did sister-in-law Nangong not come? The smile vanished from Jiang Xuan's face. Lu Fengqi and the others felt their hearts drop. Oh no. Tua opened his mouth at the wrong time again. Bang! Gu Shintong moved with lightning speed, landing a punch on the back of Xianyuan Tuo's head. He clamped a hand over the man's mouth, while gesturing to his own temple to imply Tua was simple-minded. Old Tua is just like this, a few gears short of a clock. Gu Shintong apologized with a nervous laugh. Please bear with him, Brother Jiang. Don't take it to heart. Lu Fengqi and the others quickly chimed in with their own apologies. Jiang Xuan waved them off, his expression neutral. Something happened. She has already left Xuantian, he said quietly. The group stunned, their spirits sinking. They had witnessed the terrifying power of Nangong Mingyue. She had incinerated an enchanted Arhut from the Buddhist sect with a single finger. Even with her cultivation suppressed, her combat prowess was haunting. They had truly believed she would be the one to stand by Jiang Xuan's side as he conquered Xuantian. To hear that something had gone wrong was a heavy blow. Lu Fengqi and the others remained silent, realizing that any words would be misplaced. It wasn't their place to offer comfort. However, Xianyuan Tua was still muffled under Gu Shintong's hand, making frantic buzzing noises. Gu Shintong's face suddenly went pale as he heard what Tua was trying to say. He immediately activated his king's blood, using his immense physical strength to hoist Xianyuan Tua onto his shoulder and sprint away. Knowing their friend all too well, Lu Fengqi and the others quickly moved to cover for him. They gave Jiang Xuan an apologetic smile. We won't disturb you further then, Brother Jiang. When you are ready to depart, just send word. They made a hasty exit toward the courtyard the Jiang family had prepared for them. The golden-robed elder shook his head. Though he didn't understand the obsession these boys had with Jiang Xuan, he couldn't change their minds. He turned to Jiang Xuan. I must trouble the young patriarch to look after them. If you have the capacity during the Dao War, please keep an eye on these boys. They are the hope of our lineages. Rest assured, the Jiang family will always be a friend to the powers of the Forbidden Life Zone. Rest easy, senior, Jiang Xuan replied with a nod. The elder nodded back and stepped into the void, returning to the Forbidden Life Zone. Jiang Changshuo watched the space where he disappeared, his eyes deep and shimmering with an unreadable light. I say, you aren't actually planning to pick a fight with him, are you? Jiang Xuan teased, noticing the change in the old man's demeanor. That man is a heavenly god. Combat is forbidden for those in the god realm right now. We couldn't fight even if we wanted to. There was a hint of regret in Jiang Changshuo's voice. He withdrew his gaze and glanced at Jiang Xuan. Still perhaps a bit grumpy from their previous encounter, he added dryly, you're only in the Dao integration realm, and you're already trying to validate your own Dao like a divine venerable. Why shouldn't a true god like me want to test himself against a little heavenly god? A little heavenly god? Jiang Xuan stared at him, incredulous. Are you serious? You seem shocked? Jiang Changshu asked, his voice steady. Of course I'm shocked. Jiang Xuan nodded. You just stepped into the true god realm, and you're already calling out heavenly gods. Who wouldn't be shocked by that? So you can be surprised after all? Jiang Changshu suddenly burst into a gleeful, boastful laugh. I thought I was going to have to live in your shadow for the rest of my life. Did you really believe everything I said? I once told the former emperor of the Great Gan that I was the disciple of a saint just to scare him. He patted Jiang Xuan's shoulder, looking thoroughly satisfied. Don't be so naive, young man. Then, with his chest puffed out and his hands behind his back, he strolled away, laughing loudly. Jiang Xuan watched him with a blank stare, finding the old man's sense of humor increasingly difficult to decipher. Just then, the great elder flew over from the ancestral hall holding 2 letters. Young Patriarch, we have received replies from the desolate Heaven Divine Sect and the 9th Prince of the Great Ming. Jiang Xuan took the letters. The first was from the desolate Heaven Divine Sect, written by Huang Shire. It was an apology. The goddess is currently in secluded cultivation and cannot respond. Should she emerge in time, she will certainly come to assist. The second was from Ming Fan. My thanks to Brother Jiang for reaching out. However, I am currently deploying my forces for a final offensive against Ming Kong to reclaim the Great Ming. I cannot pull away to help. Please forgive me. Luo Xinglan being in seclusion was expected, but Ming Fan's situation was different. The Ming race, the Great Ming. Jiang Xuan narrowed his eyes, falling into thought. After a moment, he reached a decision. I owe Ming Fan a favor from before. It is time to pay it back. He no longer needed to act with the same hesitation and caution as before. Given the Jiang family's current standing, they could easily force Ming Fan onto the throne. Even if the reputation of the Great Ming had been ruined by its association with the Ming race, who in Xuantian would dare to say a word against them? I have already established contact with the Yao family, Shen Wuke said calmly, looking over the assembled disciples. Once the war begins, Yao family members will be interspersed among the ranks to provide us with real-time locations and intelligence on the various geniuses. For now, focus on your cultivation. In 10 days, the war opens. You may kill to your heart's content and exchange the heads of Xuantian's elite for rich rewards. We obey the orders of Senior Brother Shun. The disciples responded in unison. Shen Wuke was one of the 4 heavenly sovereigns and the strongest among them. He was a single step away from the false god realm and was rumored to have received personal guidance from the Immortal Lord himself, mastering powerful saint-level killing techniques. Given his overwhelming strength and the Immortal Lord's strict warning against internal strife, he was the undisputed leader of this expedition. Senior Brother, I request a few days to settle a private matter. Another heavenly sovereign, Tian Kuiyin, stepped forward and bowed. His voice was heavy. Xuantian broke the rules and sent an old-generation heavenly sovereign to ambush us, leading to the tragic death of my younger brother, Tianqian, on the longevity stage. I must avenge this, or I will have no way to face my clan elders. With Tiankuiyin leading the way, nearly 20 other geniuses stepped out. We request Senior Brother Shen's permission. Among the disciples slaughtered by the Owl King previously, there were members of their own clans and sections. Since the Dao War had not yet started, they felt it was the perfect time to settle these personal blood feuds. After all, with the heavenly Dao decree banning those in the God realm from fighting, they believed their cultivation would allow them to walk through Xuantian unopposed. Shen Wuke lowered his eyes in thought for a moment before nodding slowly. Go, but return quickly. With the ban on God realm combatants, he couldn't imagine any danger befalling Tiankuiyin and the others. Letting them vent their frustrations would ensure they remained obedient during the war. More importantly, it would serve to crush Xuantian's morale and show those ignorant ants the absolute disparity in power. This is the intelligence the Yao family sent regarding that Owl King, Shen Wuke said, tossing a jade slip to Tiankuiyin. According to them, the Owl King and the 9th Prince of the Great Ming, Ming Fan, are in the same camp. Furthermore, they have close ties with Jiang Xuan of the longevity Jiang family. Jiang Xuan? At the mention of that name, the 400 geniuses present looked up sharply. Their eyes burned with a light that was nothing short of pure greed. To them, this tiny Xuantian was just a backwater, impoverished, weak, and beneath notice. The only thing of value was Jiang Xuan. He possessed a world tree seedling and held the top spot on the Immortal Sect's bounty list. He was their primary target. Senior Brother Xiao, these Xuantian ants are despicable. Another heavenly sovereign shouted, feigning righteous indignation. To have the older generation interfere in a battle of youth is loathsome. I was close with Brother Xiao. I will go with you to help suppress and kill this Owl King. Many other geniuses followed suit, offering to help Tiankuiyin. In reality, everyone knew exactly what they were after: Jiang Xuan's head and the world tree seedling. Tiankuiyin looked toward Shen Wuke, appearing somewhat conflicted. Shen Wuke waved a hand to silence the crowd. The Owl King is close to Jiang Xuan, but that does not mean Jiang Xuan is at the Great Ming, Shen Wuke said smoothly. According to the Yao family, Jiang Xuan is a man who fears death above all else. With the Tao War approaching and his forces being vastly inferior to ours, he is likely trembling in fear, hiding within the Jiang family to scrape together whatever strength he can. He is unlikely to be distracted by the great Ming. Would you all really rob junior brother Xiao of his chance for personal revenge? The crowd looked at one another, silenced. I know what you are all thinking, Xin Wuka smiled faintly. It is about Jiang Xian's head and the seedling. I gave that intelligence to junior brother Xiao, so he could be mindful. If he can use the Owl King to draw Jiang Xian out of hiding, wouldn't that be an unexpected harvest? If we can kill Jiang Xian and take the world tree before the war even starts, we will have fulfilled the Immortal Lord's primary command. We wouldn't have to worry about those small flies during the actual war. The group's eyes lit up. Even Xiao Tiankuang looked expectant. He bowed deeply. Rest assured, senior brother Shun. I will do everything in my power to force Jiang Xian out. Then we shall wait here for your good news, Shin Wuka replied. His gaze swept over the geniuses, and though his tone was light, it carried an undeniable authority. Xiao Tiankuang and 20 other elites took to the sky, streaking toward the great Ming immortal dynasty. With 20 experts at the Tao integration and sovereign levels, including a heavenly sovereign, they believed leveling the great Ming would be as easy as flipping a hand. The only question was how to lure Jiang Xian into the open. That Ming Kong might be our entry point. Based on the reports, Xiao Tiankuang already had a plan. The great Ming immortal dynasty. Outside the imperial city, 30,000 heavenly owl troops and 100,000 soldiers stood ready. Clad in black armor and wielding battle spears, they stood atop massive warships. Their collective battle intent was so intense that it turned the surrounding 1,000 miles into a sea of ink. The air was thick with the scent of impending slaughter. Ming Fan, now clad in fearsome black armor, stood at the prow of the lead ship. He stared across the distance at Ming Kong, who stood atop the city walls. Ming Kong, stop this useless struggle. Ming Fan shouted. 80% of the Ming clan has awakened, and 70% of the great Ming officials now swear fealty to me. The Ming race has not lifted a finger to support you, and their two true gods are sidelined by the heavenly Tao decree. What do you have left to fight with? Ming Kong, wearing his dragon robes and imperial crown, looked gaunt and ghastly. His body radiated a sinister, murderous aura. It was exactly as Ming Fan said. With the ban on God Realm combatants, the two true gods of the Ming race had retreated, essentially abandoning him. His backing was gone. He was isolated. Though he had used the two true gods to refine over 10 million souls into Ming soldiers after the Demon Cave incident, only about 300,000 of them were fit for combat. They were now gathered at the imperial city, but the quality of these soldiers was abysmal. They couldn't even match ordinary soldiers of the same realm, let alone the elite 30,000 heavenly owl troops. Wang Su, is there truly no way for me to turn back the tide? Ming Kong whispered, slumped in his dragon chair. He looked toward Wang Su at his side. Wang Su was a personal guard handpicked by Ming Kong and one of the few survivors of the Demon Cave. He had become the only person Ming Kong still trusted. Thud. Wang Su, clad in heavy armor, knelt heavily. I do not dare to speak of the future, Your Majesty. I only know that my life was given to me by you. If you do not retreat, I will fight to the death. Good. The scattered light in Ming Kong's eyes refocused into a dark, violent glare. Since there is no path back, we fight to the death. He stood up abruptly, his dragon robes snapping in the wind. He looked at the warships and focused his killing intent on Ming Fan. Where's Wang Su? Here. Wang Su shouted. Ming Kong pointed at Ming Fan and the others. Lead the soldiers of the great Ming and slaughter these rebels. I obey the decree. Wang Su roared, drawing a massive dark iron sword. He turned to the 300,000 Ming soldiers. Follow me out of the city. Slay the rebels. Rumble. Wang Su led the charge, with the 300,000 Ming soldiers following like a black tidal wave surging from the city gates toward Ming Fan's forces. Ming Fan narrowed his eyes and pointed his sword forward. Kill, he commanded. Just as the soldiers were about to clash, a voice echoed from the horizon. The Jiang family's immortal vessel cut through the void, arriving with incredible speed. Let them rest, Jiang Xian's voice rang out. Let my people have some target practice. Chapter 436, Don't Make Me Slap You. Jiang Xian flew out from the immortal vessel. His core team of dozens of followers trailed closely behind him, every one of them rolling up their sleeves and eager for the fray. They had been training bitterly for months under the meticulous guidance of the Master and the Blade Ancestor, fueled by a massive supply of resources from their young patriarch. Their strength had improved by leaps and bounds. Now, they craved a real battle to prove to Jiang Xian that they could stand on their own and conquer the world in his name. Even facing an army of 300,000 Ming soldiers, they felt no fear. Leave none alive. Jiang Xian swung his green blade, his voice cold and sharp. Understood. Dozens of geniuses summoned their weapons and charged. Jiang Hong, Fei Xian, and Lu Fengqi's group of 5 exchanged glances before stepping out themselves, unleashing powerful divine techniques to safeguard the Jiang family youths. An army of 300,000 was a daunting number, but their general quality was mediocre. Nearly 80% were only at the foundation building, god entry, or spirit manifestation stages. Only a small fraction, refined from the former officials of the Great Gone, possessed decent strength. Upon close inspection, there were barely 100 in the Heavenly Element Realm, 40 in the Tao Integration Realm, and 10 sovereigns. It was hard to imagine that the Great Ming Immortal Dynasty, once the peer of the Great Gone, had fallen into such a state under Ming Kong's rule. Its strength had regressed more than 100-fold. However, the observers soon noticed a strange detail. Ming Kong had somehow leaped into the sovereign realm. This was a staggering level of cultivation. Even Jiang Xuan, with his endless lucky encounters, was only at the peak of the Tao Integration Realm. That Ming Kong could surpass Jiang Xuan while his kingdom rotted was suspicious. It was highly likely that his sudden growth was directly linked to the extreme decay of the Great Ming and the disappearance of its strongest experts. Jiang Xuan. When Ming Kong saw his rival, his rage flared instantly. Every ounce of the wretched, miserable state he found himself in today, he blamed on Jiang Xuan. If not for Jiang Xuan, he would have fully controlled the Great Ming by now. Backed by the Ming race, his grand plan to unify Xuantian would already be unfolding. Hear my command. At all costs, even if you must self-detonate, you will skin Jiang Xuan alive. Ming Kong roared hoarsely. Yes. Wang Su shouted his acceptance, pointing his heavy dark iron sword at Jiang Xuan. Soldiers, slaughter Jiang Xuan. At Wang Su's command, 300,000 Ming soldiers turned their bloodshot eyes toward Jiang Xuan. Cold, murderous energy surged from their bodies. Kill. The roar of 300,000 voices merged into a beast-like howl that shook the heavens. Like a tide of monsters, they surged toward Jiang Xuan. Strangely, Wang Su's own movements were sluggish. He seemed to be intentionally hiding behind the rank and file, as if terrified of a direct confrontation with Jiang Xuan. When he was first refined and resurrected by Ming Kong, he had hated Jiang Xuan with every fiber of his being. He had wanted to crush him personally to avenge his own decapitation. But the failure at the Demon Cave had shown him Jiang Xuan's terror, as well as Ming Kong's cold-blooded cruelty. His resolve had begun to waver. As time passed, and Jiang Xuan's fame grew until he became the uncrowned king of Sun Nation's youth, Wang Su had to admit he was afraid. He no longer desired revenge. Having died once, he feared the end even more. He did not want to die again. He knew with absolute certainty that crossing paths with Jiang Xuan meant only one thing: death. So, he was waiting for an opportunity. The path to the heavens depends on today, Wang Su muttered, a hidden light flickering in his eyes. As the sea of Ming soldiers closed in, Jiang Xuan's dozens of geniuses unleashed their techniques. Using themselves as anchors, they formed a brilliant killing array. They plunged into the army like a cold steel fortress, a relentless slaughtering machine that ground forward, heartlessly cutting down soldier after soldier. Within moments, fresh blood had gathered into rivers, staining the battlefield for 100 miles outside the imperial city. Be careful. If you can't hold out, call for me. Don't push yourself too hard, Jiang Hong warned Feishan solemnly before diving into the fray. His eyes, glowing with divine light, instantly locked onto 5 Ming generals, all of whom were sovereigns. Though facing 5 against 1, Jiang Hong remained composed and elegant. His eyes blazed with brilliant radiance, seemingly piercing through the rules of the world. With every movement, he channeled the laws of the great Tao, exuding the majesty of a god who ruled over heaven and earth. During his time in the Earth Emperor's secret realm, he had successfully mastered the great divine technique of the myriad law Heavenly Eye, forging an eternal foundation. His combat power was now terrifying. Aside from Jiang Xuan, he could be considered invincible among the younger generation. He crushed those of the same realm with a wave of his hand. Suppressing 5 sovereigns at once was an easy task for him. Feishan curled her lip in mock annoyance. You've got some nerve, Xiao Hong, telling me not to push myself. Are you saying I'm not as strong as you? Despite her arrogant words, she couldn't stop her lips from curling into a smile as she watched him fight. She stepped into the air and drew a sword as thin as a cicada's wing from her waist. One strike of the flying immortal sword, and frost covered 1,000 miles. She intercepted the remaining 5 sovereigns alone. Frost fell and sword chi danced. Wherever Feishan stood, it was as if winter had arrived, and the world filled with endless white snow. The 5 Ming sovereigns were forced back, completely unable to withstand her. Her terrifying strength was on full display. Standing in midair, Lu Fengqi and his companions looked on with shock. If Jiang Xuan were the one suppressing multiple sovereigns, they wouldn't be surprised. But what was with these 2? How were they this fierce? That girl is a descendant of the Feishan Pavilion Master, trained personally by him. It isn't that strange for her to be this strong, Lu Fengqi analyzed. He then looked at Jiang Hong with confusion. As for this one, Jiang Hong was born with a divine bone, and is the reincarnation of a god, Kuiyin, Wu said gravely. To suppress 5 sovereigns while only at the Tao Integration Realm means he has likely finished absorbing most of the foundation from his previous life. Reincarnated god. Lu Fengqi and the others nodded thoughtfully, accepting the explanation. It made them feel slightly better. They took great pride in their own talents, believing they stood above anyone in Xuantian and could rival the geniuses of the Dao Saint realm. Aside from Jiang Xuan and Nangong Mingyue, they looked down on the rest of the younger generation. They had felt the same about Jiang Hong. But facts were facts. Jiang Hong's ability to suppress 5 sovereigns while still in the Dao integration realm was terrifying. His talent was clearly superior to theirs. The idea of him absorbing past life foundations helped soothe their egos. Reincarnated God. Xianyuan Tua looked at Kuan Wu, sounding puzzled. Weren't you a deity in your past life too? Why are you? Shut up. Kuan Wu's face darkened as he glared at Xianyuan Tua. We are on a battlefield. Don't make me slap you. Xianyuan Tua winced and swallowed the rest of his sentence. Lu Fengqi and the others were speechless, though they were used to Xianyuan Tuo's habit of speaking without thinking. They shook their heads and returned to the matter at hand. The sovereigns don't need us, and the small fry are for the geniuses to practice on, Lu Fengqi said. There are 40 Dao integration experts. Why don't the 5 of us split them up? 8 each. Simple, Gu Shintong remarked. He stepped forward, his physical essence exploding like a volcano. Using raw strength, he smashed through the Ming army like a beast of the great wilderness, crushing every soldier in his path toward his chosen targets. Upon reaching the Dao integration Ming soldiers, his royal blood surged, creating a gravitational field that weighed down like 10,000 tons. Barehanded and wild, he began to slaughter his 8 targets with brutal efficiency. Lu Fengqi and the other 3 followed suit, each picking 8 targets and fighting with absolute dominance. Before the Earth Emperor Secret Realm, they had emerged with peak heavenly element cultivation. After returning to the Forbidden Life Zone, their ancestors had given them intensive training to inherit their respective legacies. Lu Fengqi began to comprehend his grandfather's saint techniques, borrowing the power of a saint through his bloodline. Kong Chunni used her scholar's heart to absorb the collective wisdom and literary aura of generations of great scholars. Kuan Wu began to digest his own divine foundations. They were in a state of transformation, their strength skyrocketing. For such geniuses, crushing 8 people of the same realm was normal. What was abnormal was Jiang Hong, suppressing 5 sovereigns while still in the Dao integration realm. Even geniuses like them had to call him a freak. On the warship, Ming Fan, the Owl King, and the Wenchang Saintess watched the scene in stunned silence. Fewer than 100 people were holding back an army of 300,000. Ming Kong's forces were a hollow shell, but this was still beyond belief. It seems, there is nothing for us to do, Ming Fan said with a bitter smile. The Owl King nodded, marveling inwardly. Truly worthy of being the son of Jiang Haoyan. Meanwhile, Jiang Xian was also in the thick of the Ming army. Curiously, the speed at which he killed was incredibly slow, slower even than the spirit manifestation geniuses among his followers. He swung his sword slowly, struggling to cut down a single spirit manifestation soldier. His eyes even showed a fatigue that was hard to believe. Was this really Jiang Xian? Everyone watching him was struck with bewilderment. Chapter 437. The path of the hidden cultivator is hard to follow. Jiang Xian's strength. The Wenchang Saintess watched with lingering hesitation, unable to believe her eyes. Was it not said that long before his seclusion in the Earth Emperor's secret realm, Jiang Xian could already slay Dao integration experts with a single strike? Rumors claimed he had earned the Earth Emperor's recognition and inherited his legacy. After 2 months of refinement, his power should have skyrocketed. Why was he struggling so much against a single spirit manifestation soldier? Ming Fan shook his head and offered a helpless smile. Brother Jiang, this is actually quite normal for him. The Saintess turned to him, confused. Even the Owl King cast a questioning glance toward the prince. Sister, do not forget that Brother Jiang is the kind of man who would pry the very gates off a demon cave, Ming Fan whispered, gesturing toward the battlefield. Among the Jiang family geniuses, Jiang Chun was easy to spot. He held those familiar, ancient stone gates in his hands, swinging them with the force of a hurricane. While the other youths formed tactical arrays to grind through the Ming army, Jiang Chun acted as a one-man army. He used the massive gates to literally flatten a path of gore through the ranks. His raw power was staggering. Though his cultivation was likely a step below Gu Shintong's, the sheer spectacle of his slaughter was far more grand. While Gu Shintong focused on suppressing 8 Dao integration experts, Jiang Chun was faced with a sea of fodder. At most, he encountered a few earthly mysterious or heavenly element soldiers. With his peak heavenly element cultivation, the Blade Ancestor's legacy, and those heavy stone gates, he was effectively an unstoppable reaper. Unknown to the onlookers, Jiang Chun was gripped by a sense of urgency. He felt he was falling behind. In just over a month, he had leaped from the early stages to the peak of the heavenly element realm. To most, this progress was miraculous, the kind that usually takes years of bitter cultivation. It was the same reason people found Ming Kong's jump to the sovereign realm so suspicious. By all logic, a talent like Ming Kong should have taken a century to make that breakthrough. Jiang Qin's growth was fast, but compared to his young lord, it felt insignificant. Before the secret realm, He could at least follow in Jiang Xuan's footsteps and charge the front lines. Now that Jiang Xuan had emerged, he was preparing to face the monsters of the Dao Saint realm. Jiang Xuan feared he was no longer a worthy match. Kill. His eyes turned bloodshot as a fierce aura took hold. He craved power. He refused to be left behind. The ancient gates crushed soldier after soldier. Drenched in blood and bone, Jiang Xuan looked like a blood-soaked demon god harvesting souls. No one noticed that as the gates drank the blood of the fallen, a mysterious divine radiance began to flow across the stone. It flickered with a holy vibration, as if the gates were feeding on the carnage to unlock a divine inheritance hidden within. Inside Jiang Xuan, a world-shaking transformation was unfolding. Sacred patterns emerged, carving themselves into his flesh, his meridians, his bones, and his soul. It was a total reconstruction of his foundation. Lost in the bloodlust, Jiang Xuan didn't even realize he had accidentally triggered the god-level inheritance buried in the stone. Far away in the depths of the demon cave, the true demon stirred. He slowly opened his eyes, a flicker of surprise crossing his dark pupils. Why do I sense the power of those old fools? His gaze pierced through the void, searching for the source to destroy it. If those self-righteous gods hadn't sacrificed themselves to seal him eons ago, he wouldn't be stuck in this hole, afraid to expand because of the Jiang family's warnings. He soon spotted Jiang Xuan. The true demon was startled, then annoyed. It was Jiang Xuan again. Fine. After a moment of hesitation, the demon sighed and withdrew his gaze. He had no desire to escalate his feud with the longevity Jiang family. There was no profit in it. He only wanted to guard his territory and wait for the great secret of Xuantian to emerge, his only chance at true transcendence. He closed his eyes to resume his cultivation, but then paused. With a wave of his hand, he sent a divine talisman fragment through the void and into Jiang Xuan's body. It was a shard of the very seal that had once bound him. While useless to the demon, it would help Jiang Xuan absorb the divine inheritance more easily. Consider this a gesture of goodwill, the true demon mused. I hope Jiang Xuan remembers this and leaves me in peace. To be honest, he was genuinely terrified that Jiang Xuan might one day decide to level the demon cave just because he was in a bad mood. Jiang Xuan's state is a bit strange, the Owl King muttered, narrowing his eyes. His combat power is still rising. It has already surpassed the limits of the Heavenly Element realm. What is so strange about that? Ming Fan laughed. It would be stranger if a follower of Brother Jiang stayed ordinary. The Owl King went silent, realizing the prince had a point. But Jiang Xuan's performance is still wrong, the Wenchong Saintess added, her confusion deepening. Why is it taking him so much effort to kill a spirit manifestation soldier? He is fishing, Ming Fan said matter-of-factly. Hasn't he done this 1,000 times? But as the words left his mouth, Ming Fan paused. He frowned. Actually, you are right. This is off. Brother Zhang's reputation is known to everyone. Even if he were fishing, he wouldn't be this obvious about it. Struggling against a weakling? That is too fake. Ming Fan felt a flicker of unease. Brother Zhang's acting is never this clumsy. High on his dragon throne, Ming Kong was also staring intensely at Jiang Xuan. Seeing Jiang Xuan's withered, exhausted state, Ming Kong's expression darkened with fury. He wanted to skin the boy alive. Could you be any less professional? He thought. Who are you trying to fool with this act? I couldn't beat you when I was in the Heavenly Element realm, and now you want me to believe you're struggling with a peasant? Fine. Fine. Do you really take me for a complete fool? Ming Kong was livid, but he didn't dare move. Before his seclusion, Jiang Xuan could already kill Dao integration experts. Now that he had the Earth Emperor's legacy, who knew how strong he really was? Even though Ming Kong had forced his way into the sovereign realm, he wasn't certain he could win. He saw this as a clumsy trap. Humph. I will see how long you can keep up this performance, Ming Kong snorted inwardly. Even as his 300,000 soldiers were being slaughtered, he remained still. The battle was already lost, and he didn't care about the army anymore. He was waiting for a single opening to kill Jiang Xuan and avenge his ruined empire. On the field, Jiang Xuan continued to struggle against the tide. Every swing of his sword was slow and agonizing. Veins bulged on his arms, and his legs shook, as if the blade in his hand weighed 10,000 tons. Sweat poured down his face. He panted heavily. Boom. Another slow swing, and one more soldier fell. Thud. The green blade finally slipped from his hand, crashing into the dirt as if it were made of lead. Still acting, Ming Kong cursed in his heart, his face turning black. The soldiers surrounding Jiang Xuan saw their chance. Their eyes lit up as they lunged forward with their spears. Jiang Xuan's expression darkened. He hurriedly reached into his storage ring and pulled out a backup sword, a standard Dao artifact. With a desperate reverse slash, a 30-foot arc of sword chi shattered the incoming weapons and forced the crowd back. I really shouldn't have pushed it, Jiang Xuan muttered to himself. The burden of a true divine artifact is just too high. He put away the heavy green blade and faced the enemy with the lighter sword. His movements became significantly more fluid. He moved like a shadow, his blade dancing like falling snow. He glided past the soldiers, leaving thin, elegant lines of red across their throats. One by one, they were decapitated. There, that is more like it, Ming Kong muttered, his expression softening slightly. A group of weaklings should be effortless for Jiang Xuan. If fully activated, it could unleash a strike comparable to that of a true god. His massacre of 10,000 heavenly element demons in the cave was proof of its might. Under normal circumstances, a peak Dao integration cultivator armed with such a weapon should have found slaying sovereigns effortless. But Jiang Xuan was proving his own Dao. He refused to rely on outside help, choosing instead to smelt a great Dao that belonged solely to him. Because of this, lifting his sword had become a heavy burden. It was an agonizing struggle. Smelting one's own great Dao requires a fundamental transformation. One must convert all previous knowledge and power into something unique, marked by one's own soul. This process is essentially an act of plunder, pillaging one's own bloodline, constitution, and Dao foundations, and even plundering heaven and earth to claim everything as personal property. Jiang Xuan's bloodline was inherited from the primordial ancestor. His status as a genius came from that ancestor's strength, but it also imposed a natural ceiling. No matter how much his bloodline awakened or reverted to its source, it could never surpass the ancestor from which it was divided. However, if he successfully plundered that bloodline and converted it into something uniquely his own, he would solidify his power. He would become his own source, keeping his natural talents while gaining the potential to surpass the ancestor. It was the difference between being a student and establishing one's own school of thought. A saint's bloodline can be passed to descendants as a mark of talent because a saint no longer relies on external power. Everything originates from within, making their bloodline a source of blessing for their lineage. Jiang Xuan was only at the beginning of this journey, so he had not yet reached such heights. Currently, he was focused on smelting his own sword Dao. He needed to take every technique he had learned and every insight he had gained and melt them down. To practice the heritage of others is to follow an old path. Such a journey leads only to imitation, never to transcendence. Proving one's own Dao meant turning that knowledge into fuel to forge an unknown, new path. The way forward was unclear, but the possibilities were infinite. This mirrored the principles of the reincarnation treasure technique. That technique allowed him to dream of past lives to master cultivation methods and increase his compatibility with them. The higher the compatibility, the easier the study and the stronger the power. But compatibility could never reach 100% because the techniques originally belonged to someone else. By transforming the sword Dao into his own, his compatibility would become perfect. The resulting power would be immense. This was the first step. Thanks to his terrifying natural talent, Jiang Xuan had already identified the direction for smelting his sword. It was simple. He had to forget the sword in his hand. Whether it was a true divine artifact, a Dao tool, a spirit sword, an iron blade, or a wooden stick, it did not matter. When the day came that he could not even lift a wooden sword, his first success would be complete. At that point, his combat strength would explode. Jiang Xuan gripped his Dao sword and watched the 10 earthly mysterious soldiers surrounding him. He moved calmly, closing the distance with 10-foot-long sword chi that pierced through the void like daylight. The slaughter continued. He had never felt that fighting a crowd was so difficult. Yet, he was pleased to find that the sword in his hand was growing heavier by the second. After nearly an hour of fighting, Jiang Xuan was drenched in blood. He finally managed to decapitate the 10 soldiers. The Dao sword became too heavy to hold and slipped from his hand, clattering to the ground. He silently put it away and pulled out a spirit sword. He then sought out heavenly element soldiers and charged back into the fray. Ming Kong watched from a distance, his face twitching. Was Jiang Xuan still fishing for a target? It did not seem like an act anymore. The technique was too clumsy, so clumsy that it didn't even look like a trap. I will wait a little longer, Ming Kong thought, suppressing his impulses. Jiang Xuan took on 5 heavenly element soldiers. Even with a spirit sword, the fight was grueling. Another hour passed, and they were locked in a stalemate. The situation looked precarious, and yet Jiang Xuan still failed to kill his 5 opponents. At this sight, Ming Kong felt his resolve weakening. He was tempted to strike. It was at that exact moment that Xuantian and 20 other Immortal Sect disciples arrived. Each one was wreathed in brilliant immortal light, looking like celestial beings descending to earth. Their collective pressure as sovereigns rolled across the battlefield, causing the bloody conflict to stutter and pause. Xuantian scanned the field, his eyes cold. Cease your fighting. He stepped forward, releasing the aura of a heavenly sovereign. He summoned a tortoise-shell true divine artifact and fueled it with the power of the great Dao. The shell expanded 10,000 times over, blotting out the sky. Ancient restrictions poured from the artifact, forming a powerful domain that locked down the laws of the world. Thousands of lethal weapons appeared in the air, hanging over the heads of everyone on the battlefield. It was a violent, direct way to stop the war. No one moves without my permission, Xuantian shouted. Move and you die. Everyone stopped. They looked up in shock and suspicion. People from the Immortal Sect? The Dao War is about to begin. Why are these disciples here? Ming Fan frowned, feeling uneasy. The Owl King watched them closely, his expression grave. Most are sovereigns, but their leader is a heavenly sovereign. Ming Fan's face darkened with a bad premonition. These people did not come in peace. He wondered if Ming Kong had made another deal. Considering Ming Kong had already betrayed humanity for the Ming race, siding with the Immortal Sect would not be a surprise. On the other side, Ming Kong was also confused. He assumed the Immortal Sect had been invited by Ming Fan. His heart sank, thinking Ming Fan had found powerful allies. You are Ming Fan, correct? Tian looked at the prince with indifference. I know you are close with Jiang Xuan. I will give you 1 hour to bring him to me. Otherwise, before he could finish, Ming Kong's eyes lit up. He pointed directly at Jiang Xuan and shouted, Jiang Xuan is right there. Ming Kong sneered internally. He wasn't going to fall for a trap, but since the Immortal Sect experts were here, he wanted to see how Jiang Xuan would keep up his act. Tian paused and looked where Ming Kong was pointing. He saw a man being cornered by 5 heavenly element soldiers, appearing as if he could barely hold on. He instinctively refused to believe it. This was Jiang Xuan? Not a chance. Their intelligence told them Jiang Xuan was the undisputed top genius of Xuantian. Before his seclusion, he had already killed Tian Kuiyin, a Dao integration expert. Now that he had emerged from seclusion, someone was trying to tell him that Jiang Xuan couldn't even beat 5 heavenly element soldiers? It was an insult to his intelligence. Get lost. Tian barked at Ming Kong. Do not interfere. Stay quiet. And if you can be of use to the Immortal Sect, we will help you destroy Ming Fan and take control of this kingdom. Ming Kong's eyes brightened even further. He saw a path to survival. He stood up from his throne and bowed deeply. Please be at ease, Immortal. Whatever you need, I will do my best to provide. Ming Fan and his allies cursed under their breaths. Ming Kong was truly a shameless creature, willing to serve any master. At least you have some sense, Tian said, nodding at Ming Kong's attitude. He turned back to Ming Fan, glancing briefly at the Owl King. He was not in a hurry for revenge. Compared to finding Jiang Xuan, his cousin's death meant nothing. You have 1 hour. Bring out Jiang Xuan. Ming Fan and the others were speechless. Was this man insane? That is Jiang Xuan, the Wenchang Saintess said, pointing to the struggling figure. Do you think I am an idiot? Tian sneered. You found someone to dress up like Jiang Xuan and you expect me to believe it? The greatest genius of Xuantian cannot defeat 5 heavenly element soldiers? That man cannot be Jiang Xuan. The entire battlefield fell silent. Chapter 439. Changing swords and taking action. You actually make a lot of sense. But is there a possibility that he really is Jiang Xuan? That he is just fishing? Even if his technique has clearly regressed and his skill is not what it used to be. Immortal, he really is Jiang Xuan. Ming Kong was growing anxious. Were these immortals a bunch of fools? Jiang Xuan was standing right in front of them, yet they insisted he was an imposter. Was this some kind of twisted joke? He was counting on these experts to help him eliminate Jiang Xuan. They could not afford to mess this up now. Ming Kong hurriedly explained the situation, detailing Jiang Xuan's history of deceptive and outrageous behavior. His tone made it clear to Tian that he should not overthink it. This guy is a dog, Ming Kong implied. He has done this countless times. He has immense power but insists on acting weak to lure people in. Tian looked stunned. He found it hard to accept. Could the top genius of Xuantian really enjoy acting like a weakling just to bait people? Did he have no sense of pride? As a true disciple of the Immortal Sect and a genius known throughout the Dao Saint realm, Tian felt that doing such a thing would be worse than death. He could not afford to lose face like that. Is he truly Jiang Xuan? Tian asked, still maintaining his skepticism. I would not dare lie to the immortals, Ming Kong said, bowing deeply. Still doubtful, Tian waved his hand and led the disciples down toward Jiang Xuan. At that moment, Jiang Xuan had finally managed to kill the 5 heavenly element soldiers with his spirit sword. As Tian and his group approached, Jiang Xuan narrowed his eyes. He felt a mix of surprise and delight. He had been worried about running out of opponents. His progress in smelting his sword path was faster than expected. After killing the heavenly element soldiers, he realized that the Dao integration soldiers no longer provided enough pressure. Moving straight to the sovereign level soldiers felt a bit risky, so these Immortal Sect disciples arrived at the perfect time. If he could find a way to clash with those few Dao integration geniuses, he might finally be able to discard his spirit sword and switch to a plain iron one. Jiang Xuan? Tian asked coldly. Something on your mind? Jiang Xuan shrugged with a light smile. You Immortal Sect people should be preparing for the Dao War. Why are you wandering around here? Tian narrowed his eyes, a flicker of shock crossing his gaze. It really was Jiang Xuan. There actually was a genius in this world so shameless. It was a true eye-opener. I have come for the world tree seedling, and to take your head, Tian said. His voice was calm, devoid of killing intent or emotion. He spoke as if he were discussing a trivial chore or delivering a routine death notice. As a true disciple with the title of Heavenly Sovereign, he had the confidence to fight even a false god. Even though Jiang Xuan was famous as the uncrowned king of Xuantian, Tian had never truly respected him. This sentiment was shared by all the true disciples of the Immortal Sect. The Tao War was a struggle between the Immortal Sect and the Tao Sect. A small place like Xuantian was irrelevant to them. You want the World Tree seedling? Jiang Xuan laughed, not looking offended at all. Fine. With a flick of his wrist, Jiang Xuan produced the seedling and tossed it to the side. It radiated a supreme, holy aura. The eyes of the Immortal Sect disciples instantly burned with greed, and their breathing grew heavy. This was it. If they captured this and presented it to the Immortal Lord, they and their entire families would be granted immortality. It was a divine opportunity no one could refuse. Jiang Xuan glanced at the only two Tao integration disciples in the group, then looked back at Tian. I am still in the Tao integration realm, he said with a smile. If you want the seedling in my head, you should send someone of the same rank. If you sovereigns step in, it would look like you are just bullying the weak. That wouldn't sound very good, would it? Tian froze, looking at Jiang Xuan with a bizarre expression. Could a true genius really say something like that? He felt a deep sense of disdain. With such a petty spirit, it was no wonder the man resorted to crude tricks like fishing. Senior Brother Xiao, we request to fight. The two Tao integration disciples stepped forward and bowed. This was their rare chance to claim the seedling and Jiang Xuan's head. Even if Tian took the lion's share of the reward, killing Jiang Xuan personally would still bring them immense benefits. At the very least, it would guarantee their path to immortality. Immortality. Who could refuse the chance to transcend the human state? Tian hesitated for a moment before nodding slowly. Show these Xuantian ants the gap between them and our Immortal Sect, he commanded. Understood. The two replied. They walked toward Jiang Xuan with calm, heavy steps that seemed to shake the ground. Their auras rose like towering mountains, exerting a pressure that demanded subservience. Even though they were the lowest-ranked members of the group, they were still geniuses of the Immortal Sect. That identity said everything. Their talent and combat power were meant to crush everyone in this desolate, backward land. The top genius of Xuantian? To them, it was a joke. A frog at the bottom of a well thinks the sky is only as big as the opening of the hole. The two introduced themselves. Wang Fun, Zhao Dou. Before they could finish, Jiang Xuan's sword cut through the air, carrying a chilling chi toward them. Supporting characters shouldn't talk so much, Jiang Xuan said. No one remembers your names anyway. Insolent. The two roared in fury, unleashing their strongest techniques to meet Jiang Xuan. The sky shook and the earth cracked as a miniature cataclysm erupted from their clash. For a moment, they were locked in a stalemate. The onlookers were stunned, but not because Jiang Xuan was holding his own against two opponents. It was the opposite. Jiang Xuan was facing only two Tao integration experts, and yet he could not overwhelm them. He even seemed to be getting pushed back. This was far below the strength he was supposed to have. Has Jiang Xuan really suffered a setback? Has his power regressed? Everyone began to doubt him. Ming Kong felt a wave of regret and frustration. Jiang Xuan actually wasn't fishing. He had truly become weak. If he had known, he would have struck earlier and killed him personally. Should we step in to help? Kong Chunny asked hesitantly. Gu Shintong looked at Lu Fengqi, seeking his opinion. To be honest, Jiang Xuan's performance was disappointing. They were each fighting 8 Tao integration experts, while Jiang Xuan was struggling with 2. It did not make sense. But perhaps this was all Jiang Xuan had left. You can hide your strength and fish against weaklings, but doing it against 2 peers while being pushed back seemed unlikely. After all, Jiang Xuan was also in the Tao integration realm. Most importantly, those 2 were the weakest of the Immortal Sect group. The others were all sovereigns. Lu Fengqi thought for a moment before slowly shaking his head. Trust Brother Jiang. If he cannot do it, then even if we help, we cannot change the outcome. The Tao War would still be lost. The other 4 went silent. Lu Fengqi was right. They had the strength to match sovereigns, but the Immortal Sect's power was overwhelming. They could fight 1 or 2 sovereigns, but not a whole group. There were 17 sovereigns and 1 heavenly sovereign right in front of them. Who knew how many more had descended? Even if they helped Jiang Xuan now, it wouldn't help him win the Tao War or claim the heavenly Tao slots. They were just supporters. The final victory depended on Jiang Xuan himself. This is Xuantian's top genius? Tian and his peers were surprised. Jiang Xuan was much weaker than they had imagined. It seems we overestimated the quality of the younger generation here, one genius whispered with a smirk. Tian nodded. Honestly, he was disappointed. The Immortal Sect crushing Xuantian was a given, but it lost its flavor when the opponent was this weak. A trained athlete beating an ordinary person is a display of power, but beating a cripple brings no sense of achievement. It is just embarrassing. Then, something even more shocking happened. Clang. Jiang Xuan's arm trembled, and he seemed unable to even hold his spirit sword. It slipped from his grasp and hit the ground. A swordsman who could not hold his blade? Tian and the others felt a sense of absurdity. How could such a person be the top genius of Xuantian? It was ridiculous. Finish this quickly, Tian ordered, his tone displeased. Based on the information from the Yao family, they had viewed Jiang Xuan as a dangerous enemy and made extensive preparations. This display of weakness was an insult to their intelligence. Understood. The 2 replied. They intensified their assault, unleashing their ultimate moves to finish Jiang Xuan. Little Hong, Jiang Xuan looks like he is in danger. Should I go help? Fei Xian asked while suppressing 5 sovereign soldiers. Jiang Hong glanced at Jiang Xuan and ignored the question, continuing to strike his own targets. He had already severely wounded 3 of them and would finish them soon. He is Jiang Xuan, Jiang Hong said. Anyone else might be in danger, but not him. Fei Xian pouted. You sound like you have a brother complex, she muttered. And at that moment, Jiang Xuan pulled out an iron sword. Chapter 440, Slaying Sovereigns with an Iron Sword. With the iron sword in his hand, Jiang Xuan's speed instantly exploded, increasing nearly 10 times over. A dense thicket of afterimages filled the battlefield. His sword chi, deep and restrained, acted like a venomous snake in the dead of night or a lethal tide beneath the surface. When still, it was invisible. When it moved, it brought the destruction of heaven and earth. A quiet hum of the blade resonated. Within a 1,000-mile radius, the world seemed to lose its voice. Only that faint, vibrating ring echoed in everyone's ears. Countless divine weapons and sharp blades began to tremble irregularly, as if gripped by fear. Whether it was the spears held by the underworld soldiers, the Tao tools of the Immortal Sect disciples, or even the common scrap metal scattered nearby, everything vibrated as if subjects bowing to their returning king. The sword chi appeared like threads of silk in the eyes of the onlookers, expanding until it occupied every corner of their minds. The iron sword chirped. A thin line of blood appeared on the necks of the 2 Tao integration experts. 2 heads tumbled to the ground, their wide eyes slowly losing their luster. A clean, instantaneous kill. Jiang Xuan flicked the iron sword, shaking the blood from the blade. He was quite satisfied with the improvement of his sword path. These Immortal Sect disciples were far better than the underworld soldiers. They could actually provide a decent amount of pressure. When the pressure was right, his speed in smelting his sword path naturally increased. I apologize. It seems I overestimated your strength. Should we try 2 sovereigns instead? Jiang Xuan laughed lightly, looking toward Xuantian Kuang. Xuantian Kuang lowered his eyes, his heart far from calm. He could see the boy's strength clearly. At most, it was on the level of a sovereign. While respectable, it was not particularly brilliant or worth worrying about. Yet, he had been unable to see the true depth of that last strike. What kind of sword path was this? After a moment of silence, Xuantian Kuang waved his hand and sent 3 sovereigns into the fray. Treat this with caution. Do not be careless, he whispered. The 3 sovereign-level geniuses stepped out, calling upon the power of the great Tao to swirl around them. Like Xuantian Kuang, they could not fully grasp the reality of Jiang Xuan's power. He clearly only had a Tao integration cultivation and had struggled visibly against 2 of his peers, even losing his grip on his spirit sword. But the moment he switched to an iron sword, he had decapitated them both. The change was too sudden. Could the iron sword in his hand be some kind of divine weapon? The 3 sovereigns wondered. According to their intelligence, this boy possessed staggering luck. He was practically a child of fortune, proven by the fact that he possessed the world tree seedling. With luck that exaggerated, having a hidden divine weapon disguised as iron seemed perfectly normal. Their hearts burned with greed. They would only get a small portion of the reward for the seedling or Jiang Xuan's head, but if they killed him personally, that iron sword would belong to them. A weapon of that caliber could potentially increase their combat power by 30%. Hand over the divine weapon, and we will grant you a quick death. One of the sovereigns shouted. Jiang Xuan blinked, finding it hilarious. He lifted the iron sword. You want this? I must say, you have excellent taste. Jiang Xuan lunged. Afterimages trailed behind him like ghosts and lightning. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of the 3. His iron sword, wrapped in chilling sword chi, slashed down, leaving a slender scar in the void. If you want it, come and take it. I have as many as you need. The 3 sovereigns narrowed their eyes. They channeled the power of the great Tao into their bodies to form a defense and raised their arms to block the strike with composure. A sharp metallic clang rang out as the iron sword hit their defenses. Then, the blade snapped. The chilling sword chi was instantly neutralized by the great Tao energy. The power of the great Tao is the hallmark of the divine realm. Generally, only a false god can manage to manipulate it. The fact that these disciples could control it at the sovereign level was the ultimate proof of their monstrous talent. This was the source of their confidence and the reason they looked down on the younger generation of Xuantian. It was a fundamental difference in power levels. It broke? The 3 sovereigns were confused. Was the iron sword not a divine weapon after all? Your strength is quite good, Jiang Xuan said, giving them a high evaluation. You are very good at breaking swords. He reached into his storage ring and pulled out another iron sword before attacking again. These were forged from common iron. He had prepared a massive stockpile. He truly had as many as they needed. The battle resumed. The 3 sovereigns were backed by the momentum of heaven and earth. They fought with great Tao power, their every move threatening to shatter the void and crush the ground. They fought like ancient gods and demons. However, Jiang Xuan was too fast. He left thousands of afterimages in his wake. No matter how powerful their strikes were, they could not touch him. The fight fell into a strange stalemate where neither side could gain the upper hand. Of course, Jiang Xuan remained on the defensive. After all, every time he landed a strike, his iron sword would snap. In less than the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, a pile of broken blades, Jiang Xuan could not break through their great Dao defenses, and they could not touch his shadow. Useless, Tian Kuiyin hissed, his face darkening. 3 sovereigns could not even touch the boy's clothes. It was an absolute embarrassment. You two, get up there as well. He pointed to 2 more sovereigns armed with swords. The 2 hesitated for a moment, then nodded and entered the battlefield. 3 sovereigns had already failed to handle Jiang Xuan, so the sect's reputation was already damaged. Adding 2 more didn't matter anymore. As long as they could secure the World Tree Seedling and Jiang Xuan's head, they could collect the rewards before the Dao War began. A little embarrassment was a small price to pay. The 2 newcomers infused their blades with the power of the Sword Dao. Thousands of sword chi rays erupted, forming a domain that locked down Jiang Xuan's range of movement. His speed instantly dropped. Seeing their chance, the original 3 sovereigns rejoiced and unleashed their strongest divine abilities. One transformed into a flaming beast, lunging at Jiang Xuan with violent fire. Another condensed water power into a great Dao spear and hurled it through the void like a bolt of lightning, aiming for Jiang Xuan's face. The last merged into the earth, transforming into a ground dragon that split the soil into an endless abyss, hoping to swallow Jiang Xuan whole. Danger closed in from all sides. Damn it, these Immortal Sect bastards have no honor. If 3 can't win, they send 5. Gu Shintong roared. He charged forward to help, followed closely by Lu Fengqi and the others. Fei Xin was also worried. Jiang Xuan was the clansman of Little Hong. She knew Jiang Xuan had once stood up against his own clan elders to protect the boy's divine bone. Little Hong owed Jiang Xuan a great debt, which meant she did too. She couldn't stand by and watch him die. Fei Xin activated her strongest sword art. A wave of frost-covered sword, she instantly froze the 5 sovereigns in front of her. With a single reverse slash, she decapitated them all. Thousands of sword chi rays drifted around her like a descending sword immortal. Wherever her chi went, winter followed. She transformed into a streak of cold light, rushing through the frozen landscape to reach Jiang Xuan. Jiang Hong struck out with a palm, turning 10,000 laws into a monstrous wave that shredded 2 sovereign underworld soldiers. With a flick of his finger, he used great Dao rules to build a towering fortress, trapping 3 more sovereigns inside. He glanced over at Jiang Xuan, his brow furrowed in confusion. There was no reason for Jiang Xuan to be this weak. His intuition told him that 5 sovereigns shouldn't be a threat to him. Where did it go wrong? Jiang Hong activated his great vision ability. His eyes glowed with a golden, divine light as he inspected Jiang Xuan's condition on a deeper level. What he saw made him fall silent. What a freak! Jiang Hong cursed under his breath. He felt a rare sense of frustration. To be in the Dao integration realm and already walking the path of proving one's own Dao? Was he even human? Why did I have to be reincarnated into the Jiang family? Jiang Hong felt indignant, but he stopped worrying about Jiang Xuan. He turned back to kill the remaining 3 sovereigns, his strikes noticeably more violent. He even summoned the power of the mountain god he had refined from a divine artifact. Within moments, he crushed them. After the slaughter, Jiang Hong looked at Jiang Xuan again, his emotions cooling. He sighed softly and whispered to himself, "Fortunately, I was reincarnated into the Jiang family." On the other side, Ming Fan and the Owl King were desperate to help. The Owl King raced forward, trailing a monstrous aura of slaughter. Jiang Xuan could not be allowed to fall. Regardless of Prince Ming Fan, the Owl King remembered the guidance and care Jiang Haoyin had shown him years ago. He would not sit by. As a heavenly sovereign, he was faster than the others. He arrived first, his murderous intent threatening to swallow the world. "Get back." Tian Kuiyin's eyes turned cold. He flickered through the air and appeared in front of the Owl King. He raised a hand toward the sky, holding back the immortal light like a brewing storm, and then closed his fist. The massive aura of slaughter vanished instantly. Then, the immortal light around him split into several phantom clones. They flew out to intercept Fei Xian, Gu Shintong, and the others. "I have not personally stepped in to crush Jiang Xuan, so you all should behave yourselves," Tian Kuiyin shouted. He looked at the Owl King with a calm gaze. "Especially you. You broke the rules earlier by bullying the younger generation and killing my cousin. I will settle that debt with you shortly." The Owl King's heart sank. He had to admit that even among heavenly sovereigns, there was a vast difference in power. Chapter 441, One Man Against 14 Sovereigns. Danger lunged at him from every side, but Jiang Xuan did not show a hint of panic. On the contrary, his eyes shone with excitement. He felt the thrill of facing death, an adrenaline surge that made him feel truly alive. He would find life by placing himself in the jaws of death. To be honest, it was rare for him to feel this way anymore. Usually, his enemies were either overwhelmingly powerful, like true gods or heavenly gods against whom he had no chance, or they were mediocre opponents who couldn't force him to use his full strength. He remembered the last time he had fought with such intensity was in the Devil Den against the reviving True Demon. That had been a soul-stirring battle, one that stayed fresh in his mind. Since then, he had found no such challenge. Fortunately, under the guidance of the Earth Emperor, he had stepped onto the unprecedented path of proving his own Tao. During this process of smelting his sword Tao, his cultivation and strength were heavily suppressed. Paradoxically, this was a blessing in disguise. It allowed him to experience this raw thrill once again. For a cultivator, there was no greater joy in combat. Jiang Xuan cracked his neck and tightened his grip on his iron sword. His entire aura shifted instantly. The high-spirited arrogance of a genius, the sharp edge of invincibility, and the relentless drive of a grand path, all of it manifested in him. A swordsman must fear no hardship and shrink from no obstacle. No matter how rugged the world or how treacherous the path, even if gods and demons stand before him or death itself approaches, if there is a sword in his hand, he can cut through it all. Jiang Xuan's eyes grew brighter, and the sword intent rising around him became sharper and more piercing. The iron sword in his hand let out a resonant hum as if cheering for him. Kill. His sword chi grew lethal, his intent pierced the heavens, and his path spanned the sky. Breaking through the blockade of the sword chi domain, Jiang Xuan gripped his iron sword and leaped into the air. He lunged toward the flaming beast. Because of his vermilion bird saint body, he ignored the erosion of the fire, diving straight into the heart of the flames. The iron sword, bolstered by his sword Tao, pierced directly into the beast's brow. The blade shattered inch by inch, but the peerless sword intent had already crushed the opponent's soul. The surrounding flames vanished instantly. One sovereign had fallen. He drew another iron sword from his storage ring. Moving with the speed of a sword flash piercing the void, he traveled between heaven and earth to meet the incoming great Tao spear. Endless sword chi flew as water laws splashed in all directions. The iron sword shattered, but the great Tao spear was pulverized along with it. Jiang Xuan did not flinch. He produced another iron sword, his speed through the void never faltering. He appeared instantly before the sovereign who controlled the water path and swung his blade. A chilling arc of light flashed by. The sovereign's pupils dilated as a thin red line appeared on his neck. Blood sprayed as he fell helplessly to the ground. In the moment death swallowed him, one thought occupied his mind. How could Jiang Xuan's sword be so fast? Holding the bloodstained blade, Jiang Xuan's figure blurred. His speed rose yet another level. Fast. So fast he reached the very limit of what was possible. He moved with a velocity that defied imagination. The void could no longer restrain him, and the laws could no longer catch him. Even the heavenly sovereign present could no longer lock onto his aura with divine sense. Jiang Xuan's speed had reached a terrifying, unspeakable degree. It was as if time itself had frozen before him. Die! The sovereign who had transformed into the earth dragon roared in terror. He manipulated the earth for thousands of miles, turning one side into an endless abyss while the other surged upward like a rock dragon. The ground folded over, descending from the sky like a lid to crush everything. He intended to seal the surrounding area and use the crushing weight of the earth to grind Jiang Xuan into nothingness. But Jiang Xuan was too fast. Even as the earth was collapsing, his bloodstained sword had already crossed thousands of feet to appear behind the two sword-wielding sovereigns. Blood splattered. The head of the first swordsman flew into the air. The second felt his hair stand on end. Overcome with terror, he instinctively activated a life-saving treasure for protection. But just as the divine light surged, his vision shifted. He realized he was now looking at the world from the same level as the first swordsman's severed head. Am I dead? That was his final thought. Two bodies hit the ground at almost the same moment. Now I am starting to feel it. Jiang Xuan's figure reappeared, and he grinned. He dragged an iron sword in each hand, fresh blood trailing along the blades. His arms were visibly trembling. The swords were becoming heavy. He could barely lift them. This meant the sword Tao he was smelting was improving rapidly. But it wasn't enough. The pressure wasn't high enough. He still hadn't felt the true sting of death. Al King, hold back that heavenly sovereign. I have people to kill, Jiang Xuan said coldly. He looked toward the group of 14 sovereigns, the curve of his smile widening until he let out a laugh. You all are about to suffer greatly. His smile was bright, almost manic. His figure vanished instantly, leaving a trail of afterimages as he charged toward the 14 experts. During this sprint, he pulled out a third iron sword and gripped it between his teeth. One sword was unsteady, two had to be dragged, and with three, the slaughter began. He didn't bother with the worm hiding in the ground. He didn't want to waste time. These remaining 14 sovereigns were strong enough. Perhaps they could provide the pressure he needed to walk the razor's edge between life and death. This time, he would dance wildly on the tip of the blade. The 14 sovereigns were stunned. They were shocked by the sudden explosion of power that allowed Jiang Xuan to kill 4 of their peers in the blink of an eye. What kind of strength was this? Just moments ago, he was struggling against 2 Tao integration cultivators. Seeing him charge at them, they felt a sense of disbelief. Did he really intend to fight 14 sovereigns alone? Was he insane? Kill him. The 14 sovereigns unleashed their techniques and met Jiang Xuan head-on. Even though he had displayed a power they didn't understand, they felt no fear. No matter how strong he was, there was no way he could defeat 14 sovereigns at once. This wasn't the lower realms anymore where one could easily fight 10 or 100. They were sovereigns, geniuses chosen from millions. Jiang Xuan was a dead man. The Owl King was equally shocked. Had Jiang Xuan lost his mind? But there was no time to think. He followed Jiang Xuan's request and moved to intercept Xuantian Realm. Trying to stop me? Xuantian Realm laughed and retreated 1,000 feet to avoid the Owl King's strike. Standing high in the air, he spoke calmly. If you stay still, I will stay here and won't interfere. I want to see exactly how Jiang Xuan plans to kill 14 of my Immortal Sect sovereigns. Xuantian Realm looked down at Jiang Xuan with a sneer of contempt. He has made a bit of a name for himself in this barren land and been called the top genius by a bunch of frogs in a well. Does he actually believe he is some kind of world-class talent? Utterly delusional. Chapter 442, Tao Completion, Kill Yourself. The Owl King's eyelids twitched. He said nothing. Though he was enraged by Xuantian Realm's arrogance, he had to admit in his heart that Jiang Xuan's move was far too impulsive. How could one man possibly fight 14 sovereigns alone? It would be one thing if they were ordinary underworld soldiers, but these were the elite geniuses and monsters handpicked by the Immortal Sect. Furthermore, Jiang Xuan's cultivation was still only at the Tao integration realm. What had he experienced to make him this crazy? The Owl King was filled with doubt and deep concern. Lu Fengqi and his 4 companions looked on with pale faces and urgent hearts. Why was Brother Jiang acting so reckless now? Fighting 14 sovereigns alone was like dancing on the edge of a blade. One mistake and his life would be over. They desperately wanted to help, but Xuantian Realm's phantom clones blocked their path, preventing them from breaking through in time. Little Hong, you have to help me. Fei Xian sent a frantic mental message to Jiang Hong. Although she could rival a heavenly sovereign, she couldn't simply crush one. With Xuantian Realm's clones in the way, she needed time to break through, and time was the one thing Jiang Xuan did not have. It was not just Fei Xian and Lu Fengqi. Everyone on Jiang Xuan's side, Jiang Chun, Ming Fan, and the Holy Maiden of Wenchong, had their hearts in their throats. Only Jiang Hong remained slow and methodical, showing no emotion as he casually cleared away the underworld soldiers. He responded to Fei Xian's plea with a faint smile. That is his own choice. We simply need to choose to believe in him. Fei Xian froze, stunned. She flew back to Jiang Hong's side and stared at him, even reaching out to tug on his face with worry in her eyes. What is wrong with you? Are you sick? Jiang Hong's face darkened. I am fine. Impossible. Fei Xian didn't believe it for a second. Pouting, she said, you are obsessed with your brother. How could you not be worried when he is in danger? Jiang Hong said nothing. Meanwhile, Jiang Xuan held an iron sword in each hand with a third gripped in his teeth. He moved like a ghost between the 14 sovereigns while simultaneously dodging the traps set by the worm hidden in the earth. The danger was horrifying. Sovereigns could mobilize the momentum of heaven and earth to seal the void and suppress their targets. These geniuses were masters of Tao power, high-level inheritances, and combat experience. Jiang Xuan was constantly on the brink of death. Within moments, powerful techniques had pierced several bloody holes through his body. He was covered in gore, his aura turbulent and erratic. He had already gone through nearly 100 iron swords. Suddenly, one sovereign acted as bait to lure him in. Caught off guard, Jiang Xuan's figure was revealed, and he was instantly locked down by a killing formation. A spear master, specializing in lethal strikes, seized the opportunity. He thrust a true divine artifact forward, the spear tip transforming into a great dragon that pierced the void to pin Jiang Xuan down. As the spear neared his face, the murderous intent tore through Jiang Xuan's skin, and golden-tinged blood seeped out. A divine weapon bolstered by the power of the Tao was no less powerful than a full-strength strike from a false god. Even with a physical defense as strong as Jiang Xuan's, he could not withstand it. Most lethally, he was being suppressed by multiple sovereigns and had no time to use other means to break free. Yet, even so, Jiang Xuan remained calm. His eyes radiated a brilliant light, reflecting an indescribable excitement and madness. The tension was thrilling. His powerful body trembled uncontrollably under the icy threat at his back. His limbs felt frozen, trapped in a stalemate. Deep within his heart, an unspeakable fear began to grow, like falling into an abyss of despair. His soul was like ice, unable to move. But his spiritual awareness and senses expanded infinitely. Time seemed to stop. Everything in his sight slowed down until the spear thrusting toward him moved at a snail's pace. Only his heartbeat remained, thundering like a drum. Thump, thump, thump. Each beat grew louder and more grand. He felt himself falling into the sound of his own heart. Everything he could see, hear, or perceive vanished. Only that rhythmic, powerful heartbeat remained, hammering away at his body, his soul, his mind, and his will. This was the feeling of death. The corners of Jiang Xuan's mouth curled up toward his ears in a sickly, frenzied grin. This feels great. Jiang Xuan suddenly let out a roar. A crisp cracking sound, like a supreme tone of the Tao, echoed through the world and in the minds of everyone present. The two iron swords in his hands and the one in his mouth shattered simultaneously. The fragments hit the ground, carving deep holes as if they weighed 1,000 tons. The next moment, an infinite surge of sword chi filled the area for 10,000 miles. It seemed to descend from the highest heavens and rise from the deepest abyss. Between heaven and earth, there was only sword chi. Jiang Xuan's figure vanished. The Immortal Sect sovereigns were terrified. They were confident that their joint killing formation could trap even a false god. How could Jiang Xuan possibly escape? Cut! Jiang Xuan's voice rang out, cold and indifferent. It carried a sharpness that felt like it was piercing their hearts. The sovereigns looked up in shock to see Jiang Xuan standing amidst the dense sword chi in the sky like a descending deity. In his hand, he held a sword, a simple wooden sword. He swung the sword down. The movement was slow, possessing a distorted sense of hesitation. Yet, the sovereigns discovered to their horror that they could do nothing. They could not even move their bodies. They were forced to maintain their positions and watch as Jiang Xuan completed the strike. In their eyes, the process was agonizingly slow, as if eras were passing and universes were changing. They felt as if they were experiencing countless cycles of life and death. Their spirits withered, their wills faded, and a strange sense of joy grew in their minds, the joy of finally being released. The sword fell. Unexpectedly, there were no flashy scenes or world-ending displays of power. It was just a single strike, wrapped in chilling light and sharp sword chi. It passed gently across the necks of the 14 sovereigns. A thin line of red appeared on each, and blood bloomed like macabre flowers. Just like that, 14 elite monsters of the Immortal Sect were extinguished. Jiang Xuan descended from the sky. He activated his black hole Tao foundation to heal his wounds. Now that his sword path was complete, he no longer needed to restrain himself from using his other abilities. At this moment, inside and outside the great underworld imperial city, everyone, Tian Kuiyin, the Owl King, Ming Kong, and Feixian, remained lost in the shock of that strike. Jiang Xuan gripped his wooden sword and looked at Tian Kuiyin with a light smile. I should thank you for giving me such a wonderful opportunity. I am a person who knows how to be grateful. You should kill yourself. Chapter 443, Slaying Tian Kuiyin. Kill yourself. Jiang Xuan's calm words resonated like a roar of the Tao, echoing between heaven and earth. Inside and outside the great underworld imperial city, the world fell into an instant, heavy silence. Tian Kuiyin's expression darkened. Beneath his fury, a surge of intense unease took root. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. Killing 14 sovereigns was not a legendary feat in itself. Any heavenly sovereign could achieve it. But how did Jiang Xuan do it? The boy was still only in the Tao integration realm. Earlier, he had struggled against two opponents of the same level, suppressed until he had no room to strike back. How had his combat power soared so drastically in such a short window? Was he baiting them? Tian Kuiyin did not believe Jiang Xuan had the audacity to set a trap for the Immortal Sect. Had he just broken through? If so, what kind of breakthrough could bridge such a massive gap in power? Driven by caution, Tian Kuiyin secretly crushed an immortal talisman to message Shen Wuke for reinforcements. On the surface, he remained composed, playing for time. As a heavenly sovereign, he might be in danger alone, but if 3 more of his rank arrived along with hundreds of sect geniuses, they would crush Jiang Xuan with absolute force. No matter how strange the boy became, he would not be able to turn the tide against such odds. The number 1 genius of Xuantian truly has some skill, Tian Kuiyin said, his voice level as he met Jiang Xuan's gaze. With such talent, you would be a top contender even in the Tao Saint realm. It is a pity for you to be trapped in a place as barren as Xuantian. He let out a soft sigh, feigning appreciation for a fellow talent. If you seek the great Tao, I can introduce you to the Immortal Lord to join our sect. As a true disciple, I hold a place of influence. I can ensure your talents are nurtured. The divine realm would be a mere transition for you. Even sainthood would not be a distant dream. With your potential, the Immortal Lord might even personally guide your ascension to immortality. At the mention of becoming an immortal, a fanatical longing flickered in Tian Kuiyin's eyes. To be an immortal is to stand alongside gods and demons. The longevity that mortals crawl for is an immortal's birthright. The secrets of the Tao that we chase are but simple sentences to them. As he spoke, Tian Kuiyin seemed intoxicated by his own words, lost in a trance of worship for the grandeur and mystery of the immortals. Those unaware of the truth, like the Owl King, might have been shaken by such a description. But Jiang Xuan knew the filthy reality behind these so-called immortals. His expression turned icy, and a murderous intent flared. A sword hum suddenly vibrated in Tian Kuiyin's ear. Jiang Xuan had already swung his blade. If you had used any other excuse, even a threat, I might have chatted with you to let you die in peace, Jiang Xuan said. But you had to bring that up. Are you in that much of a hurry to die? A chilling sword chi sliced through the void, appearing at Tian Kuiyin's throat. The light of the blade was as bright as day. Startled from his trance by a primal warning of death, Tian erupted with immortal light, instinctively dodging and blocking. He retreated 1,000 feet in an instant. Simultaneously, a crisp shattering sound filled the air as his protective light broke like glass. A thin red line appeared on his neck, and a few drops of blood seeped out. He touched the wound, his heart pounding and his back drenched in cold sweat. He stared at Jiang Xuan with terror. That sword was too fast. He was certain Jiang Xuan's overall power was inferior to his own. After all, the boy was still in the Tao integration realm, while he was a half-step false god who had held the title of Heavenly Sovereign for years. But that sword was impossible to defend against. Was that really a speed a Tao integration cultivator could achieve? It felt faster than a false god. Even a false god, who could travel through space briefly by manipulating worldly power, might not match that sheer velocity. As expected of a heavenly sovereign, you have some tricks, Jiang Xuan laughed. He wasn't surprised the man had dodged the strike. Having successfully smelted his sword Tao, Jiang Xuan estimated his current strength, using only his sword, to be at the heavenly sovereign level. If he used his other trump cards, it would be a different story, but he would not do so on this path of proving his own Tao unless absolutely necessary. Jiang Xuan lunged again. Previously, his movement left a trail of afterimages. Now, he exceeded the limits of worldly speed. Space itself could no longer bind him, at least, not the space of Xuantian. His figure vanished. In Tian's vision, there was nothing but a barrage of chilling sword qi. He could not lock onto Jiang Xuan's physical location. He had to rely entirely on his spiritual senses to detect fluctuations in the void to guess the boy's general direction. Tian grew frustrated. As a true disciple of the Immortal Sect, he was a veteran of 1,000 battles. He had faced countless strange techniques, but never anything as difficult to handle as this. Within seconds, Jiang Xuan struck dozens of times from impossible angles. Tian defended himself clumsily. Though his vast experience allowed him to block the lethal blows, he could not avoid being wounded. Several bloody gashes now marked his body. You go too far, Tian roared. He thrust his hands into the void, pulling out 2 massive chains forged from the power of the great Tao. He lashed out wildly, shattering the surrounding space and exposing the deep, turbulent darkness of the void. He intended to force Jiang Xuan out. The turbulent void contained chaotic fragments of laws and the eroding power of time. Even divine beings feared staying there too long for fear of having their foundations corroded. No matter how strong Jiang Xuan was, he was still just a Tao integration cultivator. The turbulence should swallow him whole. As the space for 10,000 feet collapsed into darkness, Jiang Xuan's figure was forced into the open. In this void, everything is chaos, Tian sneered. You cannot draw power from heaven and earth here. How much strength does your sword Tao have left? He shattered his Tao chains, sending waves of violent, chaotic energy dancing in all directions. In this environment, even he could not easily draw external power, and his own chains had lost their full potency. But he was flipping the table. If neither of them could draw external power, he believed his own innate foundations would crush Jiang Xuan. At the very least, Jiang Xuan's speed would be hindered. Once he could track the boy, the kill would be easy. A dull, heavy rumbling filled the darkness. The violent energy shook the void, creating massive waves of chaotic debris. Jiang Xuan looked around, somewhat surprised. Destroying the space to create a battlefield of turbulence was a clever move. It restricted an opponent's ability to borrow worldly momentum, effectively neutering most high-level techniques. Interesting, Jiang Xuan smiled. But it was only interesting. For anyone else, even a false god, their strength would be cut by 30 or 40%. But Jiang Xuan was different. Having smelted his sword Tao into his own being, he no longer needed to borrow power from the world. His strength came from within. Whether it was a turbulent void or a land completely devoid of magic, his power would not diminish. Holding his wooden sword, Jiang Xuan fully unleashed his sword Tao. His figure vanished again. While the speed was not quite as seamless as before, it was still incredibly fast. He moved through the terrifying turbulence without a single scrap of energy touching his clothes. He appeared instantly before Tian and swung. A 10-foot beam of sword light erupted, its edge incredibly sharp. Tian swung his remaining energy frantically to block. Boom. The turbulence surged. Jiang Xuan vanished again. A moment later, a wooden sword lunged toward Tian's back. Panicked, the sovereign activated a defensive secret art, encasing himself in a weathered, immortal stone shell. This was one of the top 10 defensive arts of the Immortal Sect. At his level, it could withstand a full strike from a false god without taking a scratch. Instead of retreating, Tian prepared to counterattack during this opening. But in the next heartbeat, he heard a sickening puncture. The defense he deemed impenetrable was pierced by that unremarkable wooden sword as if it were soft curd. The blade went through the stone shell and straight through his heart. How? How is this possible? Tian's pupils constricted. What kind of sword is that? How could it break my sect's secret art? Why is your sword Tao not weakened? Jiang Xuan smiled faintly, not bothering to explain. He poured his sword Dao into the strike, and the wooden sword erupted with infinite qi. Tian Kuiyin's body disintegrated instantly, flesh and bone flying into the void. A true disciple of the Immortal Sect, a heavenly sovereign of his generation, had fallen, compounded by an overestimation of his sect's defensive arts and a fatal underestimation of Jiang Xuan's lethal sharpness. He was dead in a single stroke. Jiang Xuan watched the space heal itself. In the receding darkness of the void lay the scattered remains of Tian Kuiyin. Jiang Xuan shook his head, feeling a flicker of boredom. It was becoming harder and harder to find an equal opponent. Truthfully, his opponent's defensive technique was powerful. Had Jiang Xuan not smelted his sword Dao, he would have had to exhaust many methods to break it. But the world has no room for what-ifs. With the blessing of a smelted sword Dao, even a common wooden sword possessed peerless sharpness. Piercing through Tian Kuiyin's secret art was simple. The wooden sword was merely a vessel. What Jiang Xuan held was the sword, but more importantly, he held the weight of his own path. This was also the reason he could barely lift the blade. As the sword Dao was infused into the physical sword, the stronger the Dao became, the heavier the weapon grew. This was the very essence of the process. Having slain a sovereign with a wooden sword, he had completed the first stage. Now, the road ahead was clear. He would have to pick up the iron sword, the spirit sword, the Dao weapon, and finally the true divine weapon, one by one. This was bound to be a grueling challenge. Picking up a new weapon meant his sword Dao had to improve, but that improvement would make the sword even heavier, which in turn required an even stronger Dao to lift. It was a nearly impossible cycle of progression. It is a long road with a heavy burden, Jiang Xuan thought with a smile. Fortunately, he was in no rush. Smelting the sword Dao was only the first step. The second step would involve smelting his various inheritances and his own bloodline. As the turbulent void settled, the surrounding space finished mending. Jiang Xuan's figure reappeared before the crowd. Tian Kuiyin was nowhere to be seen. The result was obvious. The witnesses were shaken to their core. Their expressions were dazed. Even a true disciple of the Immortal Sect with the title of Heavenly Sovereign was no longer a match for Jiang Xuan. How could he have grown this fast? As expected of Brother Jiang, Lu Fengqi and the others were filled with awe, but they also felt a creeping sense of urgency. Jiang Xuan was moving so fast they were starting to lose sight of his back. When they first began their journey, they were at the peak of the sky element realm, slightly higher than Jiang Xuan. Now, in just over 2 months, Jiang Xuan had reached the peak of the Dao integration realm, surpassing them in cultivation and leaving them far behind in actual combat power. Brother Jiang shines so brightly that it makes the rest of us geniuses feel like we have nowhere to stand, Kong Chunny sighed. The others remained silent. After a moment, they set their complicated feelings aside and flew off to continue purging the remaining underworld soldiers. Little Hong, how is Jiang Xuan this strong? Fei Xian's eyes were wide with wonder and surprise. Jiang Hong smiled as he watched Jiang Xuan from a distance. His expression held a mix of complexity and resignation. Perhaps this is simply his era. The Owl King was equally impressed. His respect for Jiang Haoyin grew. Years ago, the father had suppressed the entire world with a single sword. Now the son had surpassed the father, crushing even the elites of the Immortal Sect. Ming Fan, you missed a monumental opportunity. The Holy Maiden of Wenchang stared at Jiang Xuan, her heart filled with shock. She looked at Ming Fan beside her, her voice heavy with regret. If you hadn't insisted on staying and had instead accepted Jiang Xuan's arrangement to inherit the Jixia Academy, you might be looking at a completely different world right now. Ming Fan's expression faltered for a moment. He fell silent, then shook his head with a smile. There is no logic in that, sister. I am the 9th prince of the great underworld. How could I abandon my people in their time of need? Accepting Brother Jiang's offer might have led to a greater path of cultivation, but I would have lived the rest of my life in regret while my home suffered. Ming Fan looked at Jiang Xuan in the sky. There was no regret in his eyes, only joy for his friend's transformation. Brother Jiang remembered our old friendship and came personally to help me reclaim the capital. I am already overwhelmed by his kindness. To witness him reach the pinnacle of the younger generation and slay a true disciple of the Immortal Sect is more than enough for me. Ming Fan turned to the Holy Maiden and smiled. Sister, do not be greedy. The Holy Maiden bit her lip. You know that isn't what I meant. Staying here was my choice, Ming Fan said gently. I have no regrets. I may lack the strength to save the great underworld from its collapse, but I am willing to use what little power I have. I was born in the underworld, I will be buried in the underworld, and I will extend its fortune for another 1,000 years. As his voice drifted, the heart within him began to beat violently. The path of literature manifested around him as a massive vortex of scholarly energy gathered above, pouring into him. Behind him, a hazy statue of a great sage formed out of light, accompanied by brilliant omens. Under the infusion of this energy, Ming Fan's cultivation soared. Starting from the 5th level of the sky element realm, he climbed through the 6th and 7th, broke through the barrier of the Dao integration realm, and continued until he reached the 7th level of Tao integration. Engrossed in the affairs of his kingdom, his cultivation had lagged behind the top geniuses. Now, due to a shift in his state of mind, his heart had resonated with his path, allowing him to jump forward to a level equal to the world's elite. Many noticed this breakthrough, including Jiang Xuan, though he did not dwell on it. Jiang Xuan flew over the city. He intended to capture Ming Kong to uncover the movements of the underworld tribe and the location of their spatial tunnels. But as he landed before Ming Kong, he was startled to find a hidden predator in the shadows. Ming Kong sat calmly on the dragon throne, watching Jiang Xuan with a slight tilt of his lips. He habitually reached up to rub his bald head, but stopped himself halfway, remembering he was currently masquerading as Ming Kong. Jiang Xuan, I will settle the debt of my decapitation later, the man said. With that, Ming Kong stepped into a prearranged teleportation array and vanished. The destination was the heart of the underworld tribe. Jiang Xuan watched him go without interfering. With his current strength, he had a high chance of destroying the array and killing the man in the spatial currents if he struck with full force. But there was no need. The man was just an insect. Jiang Xuan looked beneath the throne and saw a corpse lying there. Strictly speaking, it wasn't a corpse anymore. It was just a layer of skin. With some effort, the identity could still be recognized. Wang Su. Jiang Xuan had a good memory. If he recalled correctly, this was the bald man outside Copper Demon City who had carried a heavy iron sword and tried to use Jiang Xuan's name to make a reputation for himself. The world is full of interesting things, Jiang Xuan chuckled. It is a pity I cannot witness them all. Chapter 445, Rejecting the Master Twice. Was it Ming Kong who fled, or Wang Su? Jiang Xuan had seen enough to guess the truth, but he found he didn't much care. As his strength climbed, his perspective shifted with it. Things that once demanded his full attention now felt trivial, barely worth a thought. Even today, he only stood here out of respect for his past friendship with Ming Fan. Otherwise, he never would have made the journey. With the departure of their leader, the Ming soldiers had become a headless swarm. They spiraled into chaos, lacking direction or purpose. Jiang Xuan gave the order for his elite prodigies to continue the slaughter, letting them use the fray to sharpen their combat experience. He, meanwhile, sat perched atop the imperial city wall in a state of idle boredom. He was waiting for reinforcements from the Immortal Sects. Tian Kuiyin would almost certainly cry for help, and even if he didn't, a disturbance of this scale was bound to draw the remaining geniuses out of hiding. If they showed up, all the better. He could finally get to work refining his inheritance and bloodline. To be honest, refining his power through the heat of battle was far more efficient than quiet meditation. The thrill of a narrow escape, that raw, pulsing excitement, was a sensation he found himself craving again and again. Adrenaline is a hell of a drug, Jiang Xuan muttered to himself. No wonder people enjoy extreme sports. At that moment, Ming Fan and the Saintess of Wenchang flew toward him. It has been some time, Brother Jiang, Ming Fan said with a light laugh. Your presence has grown even more dazzling. Ming Fan took a seat beside Jiang Xuan, his movements natural and entirely devoid of hesitation. The Saintess, however, was a different story. Her every gesture was stiff, her unease visible to the naked eye. It was hardly surprising. Given Jiang Xuan's current reputation, there were few in the vast world of Xuantian who could remain composed in his presence. Jiang Xuan glanced at Ming Fan. Seeing the man so relaxed, he couldn't help but crack a smile. I am the greatest genius in all of Xuantian, he teased. Is this really how you treat me? Ming Fan smiled back. How should I treat you, Brother Jiang? Tell me, and I shall learn the proper etiquette immediately. TSK, Jiang Xuan clicked his tongue. There aren't many people as smooth-tongued as you. You flatter me, Ming Fan chuckled. It is merely wordplay. To speak or not to speak makes no difference to me, but if it pleases your ears, I am happy to continue. Spoken like a true scholar, Jiang Xuan praised. Listen, the Ming clan has retreated. Once these soldiers are cleared out, you can reclaim Great Ming with ease. I will issue a proclamation in the name of the Jiang family to all of Xuantian. No one is to take out their old grudges against the Ming clan on your people. Great Ming might not reach its former heights, but preserving your legacy and staying safe should be simple enough. This is all thanks to your intervention, Brother Jiang. I will remember this debt for the rest of my life. Ming Fan stood and bowed deeply, performing a formal Taoist salute. Jiang Xuan didn't move, accepting the gesture in full. He had earned this bow. To stand and offer false modesties would only have created an unnecessary wall between them. Ming Fan understood the silent acknowledgement, and his smile widened as he sat back down. What are your plans for the future? Jiang Xuan asked casually. Ming Fan froze for a second. He looked at Jiang Xuan, a realization dawning on him. You have something in mind for me? I do, Jiang Xuan nodded, dropping the pleasantries. After the Tao War ends, I am heading to the Tao Saint Realm. I want you to come with me. I will have the master take you as a disciple to rebuild the Jixia Academy. If all goes well, you will be the next master. Jiang Xuan was already a young king. Becoming a human king was only a matter of time. His word carried the will of the human race. Appointing a new master was, for him, as simple as saying it out loud. Ming Fan fell silent, lost in thought. Beside them, the saintess was practically vibrating with anxiety. She looked ready to accept on his behalf if she could. Only her deep-seated fear of Jiang Xuan kept her from moving, but she couldn't stop herself from frantically signaling Ming Fan with her eyes. Her restraint highlighted just how much she feared him. It was the same logic used in an imperial court. A minister might exchange looks with a peer in front of the emperor because it was out in the open, but to use a private transmission was to bypass the sovereign's authority, a direct insult to his power. Ming Fan ignored her. After a long silence, he looked at Jiang Xuan. Instead of an answer, he offered a question born of his own confusion. I know my own strength. At my current level, I doubt I could be of much use to you. Why would you want to take me to the Dao Saint realm? The lack of a yes was, in itself, an answer. Ming Fan had refused him again. The saintess looked like she wanted to scream. She was ready to drag Ming Fan away and scold him until his ears rang. He had refused once before, and now he was doing it again? Others would kill for the chance to follow Jiang Xuan, yet here he was, throwing it away. She couldn't fathom what was going on inside his head. Jiang Xuan didn't seem surprised by the response. He shook his head and laughed softly. Because we are friends. He didn't elaborate further. Instead, he patted Ming Fan on the shoulder and stood up. He walked to the edge of the wall, looking down at the battlefield below. The 300,000 Ming soldiers had been nearly wiped out. A war that should have been a grueling, bloody tragedy had been made effortless by the strength of a single man. I consider you a friend, Jiang Xuan said slowly. I don't want to see you swept away by the great tide of this era, caught between life and death. If I can help you, I will. Besides, you possess the 7-aperture exquisite heart and have reached the realm of a great sage. Your potential is as high as anyone's. I truly believe you can help me. Ming Fan smiled. It wasn't because of the praise or the offer of help. It was because of that one word, friends. He stood up and joined Jiang Xuan at the edge, looking out over the grim remains of the battlefield. To call you a friend is already the greatest fortune of my life, Ming Fan said, his gaze fixed on the horizon. I cannot ask for more. This path, I must walk it on my own. Jiang Xuan looked at him sideways, frustrated. Why are you so stubborn? I am just offering a bit of help so you can grow faster. You are a future sage of humanity. With the Great Tribulation approaching, don't you want to help carry the weight and protect our people? Ming Fan's smile remained, though his resolve was unshakable. If I cannot even protect a single kingdom, how can I dare to speak of protecting an entire race? Rest assured, Brother Jiang, if the tribulation comes, I will be on the front lines. I will not take a single step back. Jiang Xuan was speechless. Fine, he said, waving a hand dismissively. I can't argue with a mule like you. Thank you for understanding, Ming Fan said with a bow. Perhaps out of lingering annoyance, Jiang Xuan looked up at the empty sky. There was still no sign of the Immortal Sect disciples. Damn it, he cursed under his breath. Where are those cowards? Forget it, I'm done waiting. If things get dangerous, send word to the Jiang family. With that final instruction, Jiang Xuan took flight. He gathered his elites, summoned his celestial ship, and prepared to return home. But at that exact moment, the sky split open. A broken sword tip descended from the heavens. Though it was only a fragment of a blade, it was massive enough to blot out half the sky. A murderous, terrifying sword intent swept across the 5 provinces like a storm at the end of the world. Then, the voice of the pavilion master of the flying immortals echoed through the realm. The Dao War begins ahead of schedule. All geniuses of Xuantian who seek to participate, come forward at once. Chapter 446. You act as a dog for Jiang Xuan? The Dao War was starting early. The news caught everyone off guard. A specific time had already been set for the commencement of the Dao War. So why this sudden advancement of 10 days? What variable had changed? Though gripped by confusion, the various factions had no choice but to move immediately. Soon, a massive crowd of Xuantian prodigies gathered beneath the shadow of the great broken sword. At a rough glance, there were already 400 or 500 people. Yet, it was clear they were not the protagonists. The true focus of the crowd lay elsewhere. The elites of the Dao sects and the Immortal sects had already assembled, facing each other in a tense standoff that threatened to boil over into a bloody clash. Shen Wuke stared coldly at Nangong Mingyue. His eyes were dark with murderous intent as he sneered. I truly did not expect an elite of the noble Nangong clan to degrade himself so thoroughly. To think you would act as a dog for a piece of Xuantian filth. Upon receiving the distress signal from Xiao Tianquang, Shen Wuke had wasted no time gathering his disciples to rush toward Great Ming. He had not expected to be intercepted midway by Nangong Mingyue. The man had led a group of Dao sect disciples to block his path, declaring bluntly that Jiang Xuan was off limits and that anyone who moved against him would die. Shen Wuke could not stomach the insult. Since they were all destined to die anyway, it made little difference whether he killed Jiang Xuan or the Dao sect disciples first. But just as their skirmish began, the pavilion master of the Flying Immortals had appeared to start the Dao War ahead of schedule. He was forced to stay his hand, waiting to finish the slaughter once they entered the designated battlegrounds. Whether I am a dog, or whose dog I choose to be, is my business alone, Nangong Mingyue replied with an airy, composed smile. You should worry more about yourself. It is not just the Tao war that has started early. It is the date of your death. Use what time you have left to enjoy a final meal. The ancestor, Qingyun, had gone so far as to pluck him from the midst of his void spirit tribulation to ensure he helped Jiang Xuan and Nangong Mingyue secure victory and claim the slots for the Heavenly Tao. This alone proved their immense importance. Though Ancestor Qingyun had a fierce temper and ruled with an iron fist, every member of the clan knew he acted solely for the family's prosperity. If he had sent Qingshi here, there was a profound reason for it. Qingshi dared not be negligent. According to his intelligence, Nangong Mingyue had not shown her face since her coronation and was likely in secluded cultivation. His goal was clear: put everything into helping Jiang Xuan secure a slot. If that meant acting as a dog for Jiang Xuan, then so be it. He trusted that Ancestor Qingyun would not lead him astray. Therefore, upon arriving in Xiantian, he had immediately linked up with Nangong Hachong and the others to assess the situation. His first move was bold: intercept and kill the Immortal Sect disciples. Under the previous agreement, the location of the Tao War was chosen by the Pavilion Master of the Flying Immortals. This meant they had no internal intelligence on the terrain and could not form an effective strategy. Such uncertainty would jeopardize his mission to assist Jiang Xuan. However, he realized that if he simply wiped out the Immortal Sect competition before the war even started, the task would become much simpler. His plan had started well. They had successfully locked onto the location of the Immortal Sect disciples using various tracking methods. But before the killing could start, the Pavilion Master intervened. The plan had failed. Do not waste your breath with empty talk, Shenwuka sneered. Once we enter the Tao War grounds, I will take your life with my own hands. I shall look forward to it, Nangong Mingyue replied casually. He turned away, ignoring Shenwuka, and looked towards Sima Xing and the other two geniuses. I know you are resentful. You think I am abusing the authority granted to me by the Great Elder, and that by favoring Jiang Xuan, I am throwing away the dignity of the Tao sects. Song Kuang and Gu Qingbei remained silent. To preserve a shred of decorum, they kept their expressions neutral. Sima Xing, however, had no such reservations. He curled his lip in derision. At least you are self-aware. Nangong Mingyue glanced at him. His expression did not flicker. I do not care what you think. Since the Great Elder gave me command, you will obey. If you do not blame me if I execute you first and report it later. Once we enter the grounds, clear out the Immortal Sect disciples and assist Jiang Xuan in taking a Heavenly Tao slot. Afterward, the Nangong family will compensate you for any losses. The faces of the three men changed instantly. Their eyes grew cold and sharp. Clear out the competition just to hand a slot to Jiang Xuan? Even a dog shouldn't be this loyal. Earlier, they had followed Qingshi because his plan to ambush the Immortal Sects benefited them. That did not mean they intended to follow his every whim. The Heavenly Tao slots were limited, and they were not about to hand them over to an outsider. We will follow your lead against the Immortal Sects, but if you try to force us to surrender the Heavenly Tao slots, do not blame us for turning on you, Sima Xing hissed. If you want to be a dog, we won't stop you, but do not expect us to fall as low as you, bowing and scraping to some Xiantian ant. They were all elites of the 3 sects and 4 families. Even if Nangong Mingyue was a half-step into the void spirit realm, they did not fear him. They would respect the elder's decision to let him lead the front, but if it came to the Heavenly Tao slots, they would fight for them even if it meant facing the wrath of the High Council. Nangong Mingyue narrowed his eyes. He didn't argue. He simply offered a quiet warning. You likely will not believe my words, but I suggest you be careful. The Heavenly Tao slots are a great fortune, but your lives are far more precious. As fellow members of the Tao sects, I do not wish for us to turn our blades on one another. Fine. Sima Xing laughed, his voice trembling with rage. The war has not even started, yet you want us to bow our heads and give away the prize. There is no logic in this. Nangong Mingyue, get this through your head. We do not need the Nangong family to win this war. With that, Sima Xing led the disciples of the Sima family away from the main group. Song Kuang and Gu Qingbei exchanged a glance before looking back at Qingshi. The Great Elder placed you in command of the Tao sect disciples. Do you truly intend to push things this far? Nangong Mingyue remained unmoved. My mind is made up. You may stay or go as you please, but the Heavenly Tao slot must go to Jiang Xuan. Absurd. Song Kuang and Gu Qingbei spat the words out. Like Sima Xing, they led their respective followers away to join the splinter group. With the departure of the Sima family, the sky-plucking Holy Land, and the Taiheng Grotto Heaven, the Tao sect forces instantly shrank by nearly 30%. The group was now visibly divided into 2 camps. The remaining prodigies, aside from the dozen members of the Nangong family, came from various regional powerhouse factions. Their status was lower than that of the primary sects and families. They stood in stunned silence. Given the disparity in their backgrounds, they were forced to follow the lead of the top-tier elites, but now they had to choose which side to back. A moment later, they made their choices. Out of more than 200 disciples, Nearly 60% chose to side with Sima Xing. At the end of the day, they had come to the Dao War to fight for their own fortunes. Even if their chances were slim, they were not about to abandon them entirely. Furthermore, giving it up for a local like Jiang Xuan? It was madness. The remaining 40% stayed, choosing to continue following Nangong Mingyue. The Great Elder had explicitly placed him in charge. They lacked the courage to defy such an order and feared the heavy punishment that would surely fall upon them and their families if they rebelled. Of course, the underlying reason was that they knew the heavenly Dao slots were beyond their reach anyway. Giving them up was no great loss if they could secure compensation from the Nangong family instead. And so, the Dao sect disciples were split. One side, led by Nangong Mingyue, numbered about 100. The other, led by Sima Xing, Song Kuang, and Gu Qingbei, had roughly 200. The sight left the onlookers bewildered. The war was about to begin, so why were the Dao sects busy with internal strife? The Immortal Sect disciples were even more vocal with their mockery. The battle hasn't even started and they are already biting each other, Shenwuka remarked, clapping his hands in derision. Truly, I have never seen such a spectacle. Where did you learn such brilliant leadership skills? I am impressed. Nangong Mingyue looked at Shenwuka, completely unbothered. He even allowed a small, mysterious smile to play on his lips. Nangong Hachong and Nangong Heguan were just as confused. Brother Mingyue, what is the meaning of this? Hachong whispered. We could have waited until the immortal sects were dealt with before making our move. Why show our hand to Sima Xing now? Nangong Mingyue shook his head, offering no explanation. Based on Ancestor Qingyun's instructions, he could see how important Jiang Xuan was. In the Ancestor's eyes, the opportunity Jiang Xuan represented far outweighed the value of a heavenly Dao slot. Furthermore, there was a massive difference between the Nangong family helping Jiang Xuan and the Dao sect as a whole helping him. If the Nangong family did it alone, the bond and the immense debt of gratitude would belong to them. If everyone helped, that gratitude would be diluted among all the factions. Remember this, Nangong Mingyue sent a grave telepathic message to his kinsman. Jiang Xuan is the fortune of our Nangong family. Chapter 447. Couldn't help it. One strike of the sword. High atop the broken sword, the pavilion master of the flying immortals gazed down at the gathered prodigies. He compared the factions in his mind, his brow furrowed with worry. This disparity was the very reason he had opened the Dao War ahead of schedule. He had noticed signs of the Dao and Immortal sects preparing for an early clash. If he allowed that to happen, the victor of that skirmish would likely dominate the entire proceedings, leaving Xuantian with no role to play. With their current strength, Xuantian's only hope lay in a stalemate between the two great powers. Only if the outsiders exhausted one another could the locals find a narrow window of opportunity. I can only place my hopes on Jiang Xuan, the pavilion master sighed inwardly. The infighting within the Dao sect had not escaped his notice, and it only added to his unease. Compared to the Immortal Sect, the Dao sect had always maintained a relatively civil attitude toward Xuantian. But with their forces now fractured by internal strife, how could they possibly withstand the Immortal Sect's might? If the Immortal Sect exerted total dominance during the war, the youths of Xuantian would be lucky to return alive, let alone claim a prize. Suddenly, Jiang Xuan arrived. A celestial ship tore through the void, the banners of the Jiang family fluttering in the wind. Jiang Xuan, Jiang Hong, Fei Xian, and Lu Fengqi stepped down from the vessel. Jiang Xuan had opted not to bring Jiang Chun and the rest of his retainers. He sent them back to the family estate instead. The enemies in this war were the elites of the Dao and Immortal sects, mostly sovereigns. His followers lacked the strength to resist such foes. Staying would not only put them in danger, but would also hinder his own speed. Every eye on the field shifted toward him. Given his current fame, Jiang Xuan was the undisputed top prodigy of Xuantian. To the locals, he represented one of the few genuine chances to snatch a victory from the jaws of the foreign tigers. The other geniuses of Xuantian understood this well. Yet, they had come regardless. Some were fueled by a burning resentment toward the Immortal Sect's arrogance, determined to prove that Xuantian was not devoid of talent. Others still held on to a tiny, flickering hope that they might be the ones to touch the heavenly Dao. Nangong Mingyue watched Jiang Xuan with a scrutinizing gaze. To be honest, he harbored a trace of resentment over being pulled away from his void spirit tribulation just to assist this youth. He wanted to see for himself what kind of ability this boy possessed, a boy whose name had reached even the distant Dao Saint realm. He would fulfill his orders, but he wanted to know if the target was truly worth the effort. Sima Xing, Song Kuang, and the others stared coldly at Jiang Xuan, their eyes glinting with hidden intentions. They had defied the Great Elder and broken away from Nangong Mingyue primarily for the heavenly Dao slots, but they also had their eyes on another prize, the world tree sapling in Jiang Xuan's possession. How could a mere ant from a backwater realm like Xuantian have the luck to possess such a supreme treasure? They felt a deep sense of disdain. To them, a common man carrying a treasure was a crime in itself. Jiang Xuan had no right to hold something so divine. Meanwhile, Shen Wuke and the Immortal Sect disciples watched Jiang Xuan with blatant hunger and mockery, as if looking at a prize animal waiting for the slaughter. Jiang Xuan's head and the world tree sapling were worth rewards that rivaled the Heavenly Dao slots themselves. Since there was only one slot but many rewards to be shared, they saw Jiang Xuan as the more attainable and lucrative target. As expected of Brother Jiang, Lu Fengqi teased, "You are the center of the vortex wherever you go." Jiang Xuan shook his head with a faint smile. The heart of man is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. The world is full of people who cannot see their own limits, fools who see me as easy prey to be handled at their whim. I have grown used to it. The five companions felt a strange shift in the air as they listened. For a moment, Jiang Xuan seemed transcendent, his temperament and perspective rising far above the crowd. Beside them, Fei Xian curled her lip, thinking Jiang Xuan certainly knew how to act the part of a brooding genius. Jiang Hong, however, cast a veiled glance at his kinsman, his eyes lowered in thought. With Jiang Xuan's arrival, the primary forces of Xuantian were nearly all present. Among them was Lu Xuanji, who had once won 100 battles only to have his spirit crushed by Xiao Tianqiu. He had come to rebuild his broken Dao heart by hunting Immortal Sect disciples. There was also Ji Changkong, famous for his narrow defeat at Jiang Xuan's hands, and the divine maiden of the Wang family, Wang Xiuxi. Under the massive resource injections from the Flying Immortals Pavilion, several elder cultivators under the age of 300 had broken through to the sovereign realm and stood ready. Most notable, however, were the members of the Yao family. Thanks to their family's desperate investment, these 10 or so disciples had reached the early stages of the fusion Dao realm. Their combined strength was significant, placing them in the upper middle tier of the Xuantian groups. Yet, from the moment they arrived, they were the target of intense, hostile scrutiny. Had the Dao were not been seconds away from starting, these Yao disciples would have likely been torn apart by the other factions. Everyone wanted to curry favor with the ascendant Jiang family, and killing a few Yao traitors was the easiest way to do it. Aware that their name was mud in Xuantian, the Yao disciples huddled in a corner, heads bowed, trying to remain invisible until they could enter the safety of the war grounds. Once inside, they believed the tables would turn. After all, they were now the unofficial subordinates of the Immortal Sect. Shen Wuke knew their situation well. He offered a knowing look to the Yao leader, Yao Wukue, but otherwise ignored them. Once the war began, the Yao would serve as his insiders. With their help, not a single prodigy from Xuantian would escape. Their heads would all become trophies. Jiang Xuan would be no exception. But then, the unexpected happened. A cold, brilliant flash of sword light suddenly illuminated the surroundings. The sharpness of the strike was so sudden and intense that it sent a shiver through the souls of everyone present. Factions scrambled to raise their guards. Thud, thud, thud. The heads of the 10 Yao disciples hit the ground in perfect unison, their bodies following a moment later. As the crowd watched in stunned silence, Jiang Xuan's figure slowly manifested exactly where the Yao family had been hiding. He flicked his wooden sword, shaking off the dripping blood. Seeing the wide-eyed stares of the multitude, Jiang Xuan offered an apologetic smile. "Sorry," he said. "I just couldn't help myself." Chapter 448, The Tomb of the Heavenly Dao. A single, simple sentence left the entire audience in a daze. I could not help myself? What kind of reason was that? Since when had Jiang Xuan become so overbearing? Yet, no one dared to voice a protest. Given Jiang Xuan's current strength and status, killing a few people on a whim was perfectly normal. Moreover, the Yao family had brought this upon themselves. Of all the people to provoke, they had chosen Jiang Xuan. It was pure suicide. Back then, the young clan leader Yao Wuxian had been arrogant beyond measure. He had tried to force Nangong Mingyue into marriage and sought to kill Jiang Xuan to make a name for himself. In the end, he never even got a chance to strike. He was skewered on the spot. The ultimate irony was that the weapon used to kill him was the Yao family's own ancestral treasure, the martial god spear. It was said the spear still remained within the Earth Emperor's secret realm, as the Yao family simply lacked the courage to go back and claim it. The people running the Yao family have no brains, many of the prodigies whispered among themselves. They knew the Jiang family was a colossus they could never match, and Jiang Xuan was someone they absolutely shouldn't touch. Since the grudge remained, and the Jiang family was too busy to finish them off, they should have stayed hidden and let the heat die down. To send their elites to the Dao War, they were asking for death. Quiet soon returned to the scene. The deaths of a few Yao disciples meant nothing to those gathered. After all, Jiang Xuan had struck the blow. Who would be foolish enough to make an issue of it? If forced to comment, they would likely just applaud and marvel at how Jiang Xuan's sword arts had reached the level of a sword immortal. He was, without question, the top talent of Xuantian. However, not everyone was indifferent. Shen Wuke and the other Immortal Sect disciples looked grim. Their veiled glances toward Jiang Xuan were filled with suppressed rage and murderous intent. In a sense, those Yao disciples were their natural intelligence network, meant to help them hunt down Xuantian's talents more efficiently to claim rewards. With one stroke of his sword, Jiang Xuan had severed that network. Their hunting speed would undoubtedly suffer. Very well. Jiang Xuan had just added another reason to the list of why he had to die. The pavilion master of the Flying Immortals watched this with a hint of surprise. He felt that since Jiang Xuan had emerged from seclusion, his personality had shifted. He seemed sharper, more aggressive, and more prone to killing. Based on the Jiang Xuan he knew, even if he intended to kill the Yao elites, he likely would have waited until they were inside the war grounds rather than acting with such blatant disregard for the rules out here. Is it because of Nangong Mingyue's departure? The pavilion master wondered. He shook his head, choosing not to dwell on it. He stood up and lightly tapped the broken sword beneath his feet. Vast waves of murderous sword intent surged forth, instantly blanketing the sky for thousands of miles. It felt as though they had been transported to a different world. Within the dim, swirling sword intent, a gateway began to manifest. The Tao War has begun. You shall enter the Xianyuan Broken Sword and begin your struggle within the Apocalypse Sword Tomb. There is no time limit. Only a final winner may emerge from the tomb. With a wave of his sleeve, the pavilion master condensed thousands of dark iron sword seals from the murderous intent. These seals were pitch black and radiated a bone-chilling cold that felt like the breath of death itself. The seals flew out, merging into the bodies of every participating prodigy. The dark iron sword seal represents your qualification. If your seal is stolen or destroyed, you are immediately disqualified. The crowd paused, sensing the seals within their bodies. The disciples of the Tao and Immortal Sects found this rule particularly interesting. Compared to previous wars, these rules allowed for more tactical maneuvering. If one was truly outmatched, they could surrender and hand over their seal to save their lives. Is this an attempt to preserve as many Xuantian lives as possible? Shen Wuke sneered inwardly. How naive. Shen Wuke looked around, his voice calm as he addressed the local practitioners. You should thank the pavilion master for giving you a chance to live. Once the war begins, I will give you 3 days to bring me your seals. Anyone who surrenders their seal voluntarily during that window will be spared. Finally, he turned his gaze to Jiang Xuan and smiled thinly. That includes you, of course. With a wave of his hand, he led the Immortal Sect disciples into the Apocalypse Sword Tomb. His casual words left a wake of fury behind. The practitioners of Xuantian stared at his retreating back, their eyes burning with cold rage. This was an insult too far. Jiang Xuan, however, did not seem to care. A faint smile remained on his face, though his eyes narrowed as if lost in thought. Let us go. On the other side, Sima Xing and his group moved quickly into the tomb. There was no point in talking. They would enter and let the killing begin. First would come victory in the Tao War, then the heavenly Tao slots. Everything would be theirs. One after another, the various factions of Xuantian entered the gateway, hoping to seize the initiative. In a matter of moments, only Jiang Xuan's group and Nangong Qingshi's followers remained outside the broken sword. Nangong Qingshi walked over and bowed respectfully to Jiang Xuan. By the order of my Nangong ancestor, Qingyun, I have come to assist you in securing a heavenly Tao slot. If you have any instructions, please say the word. I will not hesitate, even if it costs my life. The Nangong family? Jiang Xuan was surprised. After thinking for a moment, he realized the connection. Are you in the Great Gan Empire? The Great Gan is the ancestral bloodline of the Nangong family. Qingshi responded respectfully. We have always held the ancestral line in the highest regard. Jiang Xuan nodded in understanding. He smiled and said, you should go ahead. You represent the Tao sect, and you should prioritize their interests. Do not worry too much about me. If we reach the stage of fighting for the heavenly Tao slots, then it will be soon enough to coordinate. Nangong Qingshi was taken aback by the polite refusal. However, he quickly saw the logic in it and nodded. To be honest, Brother Jiang, I came to tell you this for my own selfish reasons as well. Given the relationship between the ancestral line and yourself, I was hoping you would show us mercy if we meet inside. That can be arranged, Jiang Xuan laughed. My thanks, Brother Jiang. Nangong Qingshi cupped his hands and led his group into the tomb. He was not sure exactly how strong Jiang Xuan had become or if the youth truly did not need his help, but he was smart enough not to argue. Since Jiang Xuan claimed he was fine, Qingshi would take the opportunity to pay him a small compliment. If Jiang Xuan ran into trouble inside, he could always step in then. Regardless, he had shown his sincerity. With every other faction now inside, only Jiang Xuan's group remained. His smile vanished as he turned to Xianyuan Tua. Tell me, he said, his voice grave. What exactly is this Apocalypse Sword Tomb? Tell me everything you know. Zhang Hong, Fei Xian, and Lu Fengqi all turned their attention to Xianyuan Tua. Earlier, when the pavilion master had mentioned the name of the battleground, Xianyuan Tua had reacted with visible shock, nearly crying out the name. Only Zhang Hong's quick use of natural laws had masked the outburst from the others. Xianyuan Tua nodded, his face still pale with disbelief. He gathered his thoughts and spoke in a low voice. That broken sword is a fragment of the primary weapon of our ancestor, the Xianyuan human emperor. And as for the Apocalypse Sword Tomb, it is the graveyard of the heavenly Tao. Chapter 449, A Holy Land for Sword Cultivators. Enter. The graveyard of the Heavenly Tao? Everyone stood frozen, their minds reeling. Those 5 words carried a weight that was nearly impossible to process. Xianyuan Tuo swallowed hard before continuing. According to the ancient records of the Xianyuan imperial family, our ancestor, the Xianyuan human emperor, once forged the Xianyuan sword. With it, he slaughtered the heavens to prove his Tao. Slaughtered the heavens? The group gasped again. Their souls trembled with a primal, instinctive fear. The Heavenly Tao. To the common folk, it was the ultimate existence. It was said that the heavens were heartless, treating all living things like straw dogs. Whenever the Heavenly Tao manifested, all life was expected to prostrate in worship. The recent divine decree forbidding combat among the God realm was proof enough. That single act had overturned the power structure of Xuantian in an instant. If the local Heavenly Tao of Xuantian possessed such terrifying authority, then the heavens governing higher-ranked worlds were surely beyond imagination. The Heavenly Tao that the Xianyuan human emperor had slain must have been far superior to the one they knew. They could only wonder what kind of godlike power the emperor possessed to achieve such a feat. Jiang Xuan narrowed his eyes, hidden shock flickering in his gaze. Slaughtering the heavens to prove one's Tao. He knew that trope all too well. It was practically the standard requirement for a protagonist. Why does it feel like every single one of these human ancestors was a main character in their own right? Jiang Xuan thought, biting his lip. He recalled that moment in the Demon Den when Ming Fan's poetry had summoned the projection of the Tang Emperor. That figure had looked at him and said, "Junior, we are waiting for you on the other side. Is my life really going to get that abstract?" Jiang Xuan twitched. Xianyuan Tuo spoke up again. The Apocalypse Sword Tomb is the very place where our ancestor buried that Heavenly Tao. He sealed it within his own weapon, the Xianyuan sword. He left behind ancestral instructions for the Xianyuan imperial family to guard the tomb and ensure the Heavenly Tao never experienced a resurgence. However, Xianyuan Tuo's expression soured, his voice tinged with guilt. When the human race was defeated long ago, our family suffered heavy losses. The Xianyuan sword was shattered by an alien emperor during the Great War, its fragments scattered across the heavens. For nearly 10 million years, my family has hidden in Xuantian, secretly searching for those fragments. We hope to fulfill our duty, but our strength has waned too much. We never found a trace. He shook his head with a bitter smile. I never imagined a piece would end up in the hands of the Pavilion Master of the Flying Immortals. The group fell silent, trying to digest the massive implications. The battleground for the Tao War was a fragment of the Xianyuan sword. Inside sat the Apocalypse Sword Tomb, a prison for a dead god. And most importantly, that dead god had the potential to wake up. Without a jailer for 10 million years, what state was the tomb in now? Lu Fengqi and the others swallowed nervously. Fear and panic began to bleed into their expressions. If the Heavenly Tao had truly revived, entering that place was a death sentence. To hell with the Tao War and the rewards. Life was more important. Lu Fengqi looked at Jiang Xuan, hesitating. Brother Jiang, the dangers inside are unknown. Even if the chance of a revival is slim, we shouldn't gamble against those odds. Maybe we should. He didn't finish the sentence, but the meaning was clear. Jiang Xuan was the top prodigy of Xuantian. He was strong enough to slay a Heavenly Venerable. Winning the Tao War should have been a walk in the park. But no matter how strong Jiang Xuan was, he couldn't fight the heavens themselves. The group turned to Jiang Xuan, waiting for his decision. Seeing their grim faces, Jiang Xuan found himself stuck between a laugh and a sigh. "Don't scare yourselves," he said. "Even if it is a graveyard for the heavens, so what? That thing was slaughtered by the Xianyuan human emperor. It isn't exactly easy for something like that to come back to life. Do you really think we'll be the lucky ones to run into it?" He shook his head, a playful smirk returning. "Who do you think you are? Protagonists in some epic novel?" He paused as the thought hit him. He might not be the hero of an epic, but his own life script was certainly prone to accidents. There hasn't been a sudden premonition, so it should be fine, he muttered to himself. He pushed the stray thoughts aside and addressed the group. "This is all speculation. If you're really that worried, we can just ask the Pavilion Master. He holds the broken sword. He must know the situation inside." Everyone immediately turned their eyes toward Fei Xian. Everyone except Jiang Hong, who looked away and whistled, pretending he wasn't involved. Fei Xian blinked, then put her hands on her hips in a huff. "Why are you looking at me? If you want to ask my great-grand, the Pavilion Master, go do it yourselves." She still naively believed her identity was a secret. Jiang Xuan chuckled. "We are outsiders. It's much more convenient for Lady Fei Xian to ask." "Hey, what do you mean by that?" Fei Xian snapped. "What do you mean, outsiders? Am I not?" She stopped mid-sentence, her face paling. "You know?" Jiang Xuan nodded. "Jiang Hong." Fei Xian screamed, glaring at him with fury. "Why do you tell people everything?" Jiang Hong felt a massive headache coming on. Did he really need to tell anyone? She practically had her identity written on her forehead. "Humph." Fei Xian shot Jiang Hong one last dirty look. "I'll settle the score with you after the Tao War." She turned and flew toward the Pavilion Master. Great-grandfather. The Pavilion Master, who made a point of not eavesdropping on the juniors, was startled by her question. His eyes widened in shock. The Apocalypse Sword Tomb is where the human emperor buried the heavenly Tao? His exclamation was so loud that Jiang Xuan and the others below heard it clearly. It seemed the pavilion master knew even less than they did. They shared a series of helpless smiles. In a flash, the pavilion master appeared before them with face yin in tow. He looked at Xianyuan Tua with a grave expression. Are you certain of this? Xianyuan Tua nodded. Our ancestral records don't make mistakes about such things. The pavilion master's face darkened. He felt a wave of unease. Had he accidentally caused a disaster with good intentions? This fragment had been granted to him by the heavens of Xuantian. He knew it was a supreme treasure, but he had never been able to fully decipher its secrets, nor had he explored the depths of the tomb. He had chosen it as the battleground only because it was overflowing with sword intent, a perfect training ground for sword cultivators. He had hoped that by fighting inside, Jiang Xuan could further refine his skills and secure the heavenly Tao slot. Damn it, he cursed inwardly. Why is nothing going right lately? After a moment of hesitation, the pavilion master looked at Jiang Xuan and shared what little he knew of the interior. If a god is buried in there, it might be safer to forfeit, he suggested. There is no need for that. Jiang Xuan interrupted with a wave of his hand and a relaxed smile. Why would I pass up a holy land for sword cultivators? He had already fused his sword Tao, and the path ahead was incredibly difficult. He had considered setting it aside to focus on his inheritance and bloodline, but with a place like the Apocalypse Sword Tomb available, he couldn't walk away. He turned to Jiang Hong and the others. I am going in. I won't force you to follow. If you fear the revival of the heavens, you are free to stay behind. Jiang Hong laughed and shook his head, stepping forward immediately. Ugh, you total brother con. Fei Xian grumbled under her breath, though she moved to stand firmly by Jiang Hong's side. Lu Fengqi and the others gave bitter smiles. Brother Jiang, you underestimate us with that kind of talk. Guarding the tomb is the responsibility of my family, Xianyuan Tua added gruffly. Jiang Xuan nodded with a smile, but said nothing more. He turned and vanished into the gateway of the Apocalypse Sword Tomb. The others followed close behind. The pavilion master watched them disappear, a deep frown etched into his face. He felt a lingering worry he couldn't quite shake. Nothing will go wrong, right? Trying to reassure himself, he shook his head and whispered, even if a god is buried there, it won't wake up now. The world isn't full of that many coincidences. Chapter 450, Good News, Meeting Jiang Xuan. The Apocalypse Sword Tomb was not a traditional grave, but a shattered realm. It was a collection of continental fragments, drifting like dust motes through the chaotic currents of space. As the pavilion master of the flying immortals had described, the world was saturated with an infinite, supreme sword intent. The air felt jagged and heavy, vibrating with a murderous aura that could shake the very soul of anyone who dared enter. Through millions of years of exposure to this sword chi, every element of this reality had taken on a sharp, metallic edge. From the smallest blade of grass to the vast, arching sky, it was a world composed entirely of the sword. On a small fragment of floating land, the void rippled as Jiang Xuan stepped out from a shimmering spatial wave. Before he could survey his surroundings, the earth beneath him shuddered violently. Massive cracks spiderwebbed across the ground, and from those fissures, a torrent of lethal sword chi erupted. The energy took the form of thousands of translucent, broken blades, surging upward in a tidal wave of steel. Jiang Xuan summoned his wooden sword and struck out. A flash of cold, white light met the rising tide. The collision rang out like thunder, yet while his strike shattered the immediate energy, the momentum of the sword wave remained unbroken. It continued its relentless sweep toward him. Jiang Xuan raised an eyebrow in surprise. That casual strike had carried the weight of a sovereign, yet it had failed to extinguish the wave. He focused his will, activating his own sword Tao, and swung again. This time, the blade left a physical scar in the air. The wave was severed at its center, dissolving into harmless mist. But the reprieve was short-lived. Almost instantly, the cracks in the ground vomited forth a fresh sea of energy, reforming into a lethal surge that lunged at him once more. Jiang Xuan narrowed his eyes and struck again. And again, the earth replied with more blades. It was a cycle without end. This is getting interesting, Jiang Xuan said, a smile playing on his lips. He sheathed his wooden sword and activated his indestructible thunder body. Ancient lightning runes flickered across his skin, glowing with a dull, rhythmic light as he chose to meet the next wave with nothing but his physical frame. The air buzzed as the blade struck. His lightning runes shattered under the pressure. Gaps opened in his defenses, and red streaks appeared across his skin as the sword chi bit deep. The energy was razor-sharp, its power easily rivaling the killing moves of a sovereign. His physical body, as strong as it was, could not yet endure the onslaught without help. Remaining calm, he tapped into the ancient power of the Jiang family bloodline. His blood began to churn like molten gold, radiating a mysterious divine glow that reinforced his muscles and skin. The next wave crested and crashed. The sword's surge broke against him, leaving nothing but shallow red lines. I can handle this, he whispered. A plan began to form in his mind. Beyond being a sanctuary for sword comprehension, this place was a perfect furnace for tempering his flesh and refining his heritage. He remembered that before breaking through to the spirit transformation realm, he had pushed his body, soul, and cultivation beyond their absolute limits. Guided by the ancestors' legacy, he had forged a black hole Tao foundation that surpassed any supreme foundation known to history. However, his cultivation had progressed so rapidly since then that he had focused primarily on his understanding of the great Tao. His physical and spiritual tempering had fallen slightly behind his explosive growth. He was now walking the path of proving one's own Tao. On this road, the body, the soul, and the Tao were a tripod. If one leg was shorter than the others, his entire progress would falter. Can I fuse my bloodline and legacy while simultaneously tempering my soul and body? He wondered. If I anchor my bloodline and physical techniques into my flesh and melt my various divine abilities into my soul, would my combat power reach a new peak after this second step? The thought took root, becoming impossible to ignore. He decided to begin at once. He would use the endless waves of sword chi as a hammer to forge his body, forcing his bloodline and legacies to become one with his very cells. Beyond his lightning body, he held the mountain god's secret art and the legacy of the Emperor Xuanqiu. If he could truly integrate these into his physical form until they were as natural as breathing, at that same moment, a few thousand miles away on a jagged peak, one of the three Heavenly Venerables of the Immortal Sect was watching. Tian Kuiyin crouched within a shroud of faint, immortal mist, hiding like a hunter in the brush. He had been lucky enough to be transported here upon entry. His secret concealment techniques allowed him to bypass the world's rules, meaning he could move without triggering the sword waves. He had turned this to his advantage, waiting like a spider for prey. Anyone else who landed on this continent would trigger the waves. The weak were shredded instantly, leaving their treasures for him to scavenge. The strong might survive the initial blast, but they would be left broken and bleeding. That was when he would step out to finish them off. In just half a day, his storage rings were nearly overflowing. He had already claimed the lives of 10 Xuantian prodigies. Jiang Xuan? Tian Kuiyin saw the massive disturbance on the horizon, and his eyes lit up with predatory excitement. Today is my lucky day. He blurred into motion, racing through the air toward the source of the chaos. But as he drew closer, his body suddenly jerked to a halt, frozen in midair. From within the heart of the devastating sword wave, Jiang Xuan's voice drifted out, calm and cold. You look like you're in a very good mood. To be continued. Hope you liked today's video. Join the community by subscribing and dropping a like. I'll be back with another update tomorrow. See you then.